Chapter 1809. King Kong usually went crazy in Zhuoman National Park. He rarely came back today. The new kids hadn't even seen King Kong yet. Of course, it wasn't just King Kong. They were a family now. Then from now on, he would meet them one after another. For example, the underlings, the three-headed dog, the Hydra, and even Amon. When Kilo and Penance saw King Kong, they were shocked at first. At first, he was shocked, but it quickly turned into a pleasant surprise. He was a child to begin with, and he was also a spiritualist. They were much braver than normal people. This gorilla is also a strength type, Chen Zhao said. You can practice with him. Kilo was still a kid, but if he used magic, his strength would increase to 3 times that of a normal person. So, he wasn't afraid of King Kong at all. He was even eager to try. He wanted to see how strong the gorilla was. However, he was introverted and didn't dare to tell Chen Zhao. King Kong let little Kilo try. Chen Zhao only let Kilo try. He didn't let King Kong punch. How strong was King Kong? 30 to 40 tons of strength. If he didn't control his strength, Kilo would be gone. Kilo would be gone. As someone who'd been through this, Chen Zhao knew what 30 to 40 tons of strength meant. A human's body structure was stable and could withstand a lot of potential energy. It was about 4 times their body weight. But once the potential energy exceeded 4 times, the human body would be injured. If it exceeded 10 times, the human body would fall apart. If it exceeded 100 times, it would explode. For example, with Chen Zhao's current strength, if he didn't control it and hit a person, the person would turn into mist. Kilo walked up confidently and punched King Kong's stomach. In the end, King Kong's skin didn't even sink in, let alone injure him. After playing on the beach for a while, Chen Zhao brought Kilo and Penance back up. At night, Chen Zhao hugged Fei Lai to sleep. Fei Lai couldn't sleep. Chen, what about their studies? We can't just send them to school, right? Let them take a semester off, Chen Zhao said. Next semester, send them to school in Mountain Town. It's close to Mirror Lake and we're familiar with Mountain Town. If anything happens, we'll know immediately and solve it. Fei Lai thought for a moment and nodded. That's good too. Chen, can you do it alone? No problem. Even if he was tired, he still had Portia and Xin Li to share the burden. Chen Zhao didn't feel like he was dying. Other than the occasional mental fatigue, there were no other problems. The next day, Portia came with a tired expression. The only thing that could make up for her exhaustion was Chen Zhao's raise. Her weekly salary had been $2,500, but Chen Zhao increased it to $3,500. Her salary was indeed very high. It could even be said that she was now a high-income person. Moreover, this was the after-tax income. However, whenever Portia thought of the huge debt she owed, she felt stifled. Just for those luxuries that she had only used a few times. How could he have been so crazy back then? Chen Zhao must have drugged her. No matter what, I can't go on a shopping spree like that again. Just then, his phone rang. It was West calling. Guild leader, we've already returned to the headquarters. Oh, did you take the plane for the whole night? Then I'll go there later. Chen Zhao planned to give them time to rest. After all, they must be very tired after taking the plane for the whole night. I'm meeting with Wang Sieg at 3 in the afternoon. Okay, I'll be there before 3. After hanging up, Chen Zhao looked at Portia. Portia, help me buy an MPV. Oh, go.
Now?
What do you think? How much? Less than $200,000. I need a lot of space and safety. Okay. Portia was speechless at Chen Zhao's intermittent impatience. However, she was also envious of Chen Zhao's wealth. He didn't need to think much about buying a car. $200,000 was already a super luxury car. It was the same even for an MPV. Portia could roughly understand Chen Zhao's needs. Chen Zhao definitely didn't want to drive an RV every time he took a kid out. That RV was indeed too flashy. Boss, where are you going today? The company. The place last time? Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. You don't need to go. Oh, help me get a few computers and a few tablets in the afternoon. Got it, boss. Damn capitalists, Portia thought to herself. Portia's work efficiency was very high. In just 2 hours, she drove the new car back. The Mercedes-Benz X, so 211 mpv, had a huge interior and could seat 12 people. It also had the same anti-collision level as a school bus. All the performance parameters indicated that it was expensive. The cost plus the various fees had exceeded Chen Zhao's original limit. However, Chen Zhao didn't blame Portia. After lunch, Chen Zhao called the kids into the car. Chen Zhao planned to take them to the supernatural organization. They were spiritualists anyway, so it didn't matter if they found out about the organization's secret. The two SUVs were very stable. Chen Zhao had never driven such a stable car before, apart from the lowly supercars. When they arrived at the headquarters, Aduz, who was guarding the door, found it strange. He had never seen a car before, so he stopped Chen Zhao's car outside. Only when Chen Zhao rolled down the window did Aduz realize that Chen Zhao had come. After parking the car, Chen Zhao brought the kids into the headquarters. President West was in the hall. When he saw Chen Zhao bring the kids in, he was stunned. "They are my kids. I just adopted them," Chen Zhao said. West was surprised, but he didn't ask. "You can move around freely, but don't go to places with obvious danger signs." The headquarters wasn't very big, but there were still some dangerous areas. For example, dungeons, evil spirit dens, or places where demons slept. These places were all dangerous. Of course, there was also Chen Zhao's electric shock lab. It was also the most dangerous place. "Tell me, what happened in the Norwegian forest this time?" West didn't hide anything. Then he began to talk about their encounter. No, they hadn't encountered any dangerous battles at all. When Chen Zhao heard that the giants would appear in lightning, he couldn't help but be surprised. /35_ 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1810. It's some kind of image, West said. It should be a remnant from the past. It witnesses the true giant's existence at a certain time, but it only appears at the moment of lightning. Chen Zhao and West stood by the window and watched the children running outside. To these children, everything here was very novel. Of course, they were spiritualists, so they didn't find it unacceptable. Just then a sports car drove in. Wenk Sieg was here. Chen Zhao and West walked out of the headquarters to welcome her. "Ms. Wenk." "Mr. Chen, hello." "Mr. West, hello." West handed a heroic spirit notebook to Wenk Sieg. "Ms. Wenk, this is the Scarlet Mission, the Nordic Giants battle record." "Thank you." Wenk Sieg was very satisfied. She didn't care about the difficulty of the mission. She only needed the results. The supernatural organization didn't disappoint her. "Which one will you choose for the second Scarlet Mission?" Wenk Sieg asked. "I'm still considering," Chen Zhao said perfunctorily. The first 3 missions were the Rock of Slaughter, the Nordic Giant, and the North Sea Monster. Now, the Rock of Slaughter mission was completely useless, and the North Sea Monster had been taken. They'd only completed the Nordic Giant mission. So, they had to choose the remaining 2 missions again. But to Wenk Sieg, completing 1 Scarlet mission in 2 months was already very satisfying. She could answer to the Hunters Guild. At the same time, her teacher would have an explanation. Of course, this also made her more confident in the supernatural organization. "By the way, does the Hunters Guild accept intelligence missions?" Chen Zhao asked. "Intelligence? We don't accept such missions, but I can ask someone for you," Wenk Sieg said readily. As an organization that had existed for 200 or 300 years, they obviously had their own intelligence network. It wasn't just limited to North America, but the entire world. This was something the supernatural organization couldn't even catch up to. The supernatural organization was very powerful. But like most supernatural organizations, they rose quickly, but it was hard to say if they could last for 2 generations. Building a complete intelligence organization wasn't something the supernatural organization could afford right now. Most of the information that the supernatural organization could get now was from Los Angeles. The ability to obtain information beyond this range was very weak. The information he had was obtained from other people or organizations. Otherwise, they would have to spend money to buy it. Basically, they could only get second-hand or even third-hand information. Of course, in most cases, these sources of information were basically enough. After all, the supernatural organization was a regional organization. Nor did he have any thoughts of maintaining world peace. Furthermore, the investment required to establish a complete intelligence department was simply too great. This wasn't something that could be done with a few $100,000 or even a few $1,000,000. Think about it. The American government invests billions of dollars every year in order to gather intelligence from all over the world. In the past few decades, hundreds of billions of dollars had been spent to maintain this intelligence system. From this point alone, it should be known that intelligence was not something that ordinary people could play with. Mr. Chen, what information do you want? All the information about the Roma Akuk family. Wang Xig looked surprised. What? Do you know the Roma Akuk family? How could I not know? Wang Xig smiled bitterly. In the past year, there's only one person left in the Akuk family. You can say that he caused a huge commotion in the entire spiritual world. Only one person left. Chen Zhao couldn't help but be confused. He looked at Wang Xig. There's only one person left in the Akuk family? Yes, Warren Akuk. He's ranked 8th on the top 10 wanted criminals in the spiritual world. Wang Xig said with a bitter smile, in the past year, he killed more than 300 people. Most of them were spiritualists, and they were all Roma. The whole world is after him now. Wang Xig looked at Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, do you have a grudge against him? I guess we're mortal enemies now, Chen Zhao said with a shrug. Wang Xig looked at Chen Zhao in confusion. Chen Zhao's tone was rather relaxed. There was no hatred or anger on his face either. However, he said it as if it was only natural. I'll do my best to help you investigate this Warren Akuk, Wang Xig said. West had guessed a little. The children Chen Zhao had brought were clearly Roma. Warren Akuk also had a huge grudge against the Roma. So, the children's relatives must have been killed by Warren Akuk. So, Chen Zhao would naturally bear this grudge. Xian Lising suddenly regretted letting Chen Zhao and Fei Lai adopt her. Little Jerlin and little Larissa were two complete little devils. Especially little Larissa, who was the youngest. Sis. Little Larissa tugged at Xian Lising's hair. Jerlin, on the other hand, was running around in the headquarters. Just then, a girl about her age came over. Risa walked over with her hands in her pockets, studying Xian Lising up and down. You're the president's adopted daughter? Risa's tone was somewhat provocative. Xian Lising looked at Risa. You are? I'm the president's subordinate, Risa said, extending her hand. Let's get to know each other. I'm Risa. Xian Li had just extended her hand when she suddenly felt a chill. Her arm was almost frozen. Xian Lising hurriedly stepped back. What are you doing? Risa snickered. Nothing. I just want to tell you that you're very weak. Xian Lising stared at Risa angrily. Are you going to fight me? Risa lifted her right arm and pointed to the left. Suddenly, a powerful current shot out from her palm. A hole appeared in a tree with a diameter of 70 to 80 centimeters a dozen meters away. Xian Lising was shocked. The girl seemed to be 1 or 2 years younger than her, but her magic was so powerful. Suddenly, Risa felt a chill behind her. Looking back, she realized that Chen Zhao was already standing behind her. Hi, President. Are you bullying Xian Li? No way. Risa hurriedly waved her hands. I'm just showing her my magic. Chen Zhao looked up at Xian Lising. Xian Li hesitated for a moment and then shook her head. No, she didn't bully me. She was a proud person. She didn't need someone to back her up right now. /35_ Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 1811. On a small island in the Atlantic Ocean. The people of this island lived a secluded life. But now, this island was engulfed in flames under the night sky. Death spread amidst the blood and flames. The Edith residential district had completely fallen. The Edith family was the most populous family among the Roma people. Inside the raging flames, Warren Akuk stood in the middle with both arms raised, chanting an incantation that was hard to understand. In front of Walloon was a corpse. The chest of the corpse was embedded with several pillar-shaped crystals. As he chanted the last part of the incantation, a mass of black smoke spread out from the flames around him. Then, the black smoke surged into the corpse in front of Warren. The crystals on the corpse's chest became darker and darker, finally turning completely black. Southern Pillar King, welcome back to the world. The corpse moved a bit. The fatal wounds on its body also quickly healed. He stood up. Warren knelt on one knee. Southern Pillar King, sir, I am Warren Akuk, your humble servant. The Southern Pillar King was admiring his own body, ignoring Warren's actions. Akuk, you are the descendant of the Middle King? Yes, Southern Pillar King, sir. 5 kings. How many have you awakened? The Southern Pillar King asked. You are the third, Walloon said respectfully. Oh, who are the first 2? The Southern Pillar King looked at Warren and asked. It's me. Within the flickering flames, 2 figures slowly walked over, a man and a woman. The woman had a head of red hair and a slender body. There was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Her attire was extremely simple, just a loose shirt paired with a pair of tight jeans and a pair of sunglasses hanging in front of her chest. She looked like an ordinary fashionable beauty. The other person had his hands behind his back, looking rather old with a head full of silver hair. He was half a body length shorter than the woman next to him. His gaze was dim and lifeless, as if he was an old man with one foot in the grave. Sean. Bion. The Southern Pillar King's eyes glowed. The red-haired woman was the Eastern Endless Pillar King, Sean. The other old man was the Northern Shadow Pillar King, Bion. Zoran, I trust you have been well since we last met. Sean's face was as beautiful as a peach blossom. Byron nodded slightly towards Zoran and greeted him coldly. Walloon stood aside obediently. He was facing the legendary creator of the Roma, 3 of the 5 great gods. At the same time, they were also the ancestors of the 5 great Roma families, Akuk, Singus, Edith, Vaiku, and Pomes. What are your requirements for waking me up? Zoran asked. Byron and Sean also looked at Warren. They also didn't know what Warren's goal was. Fight for him? Every single one of them possessed unparalleled magical power. Moreover, they did not coexist harmoniously. If 3 of them were summoned, it was very likely that they would fight amongst themselves. Instead, its functions were weakened. Walloon lowered his head humbly and looked at the 3D Pillar King calmly. 3 Pillar Kings, the current Roma people have already forgotten their traditions, your greatness, and our glory. Therefore, this lowly servant has no other requirements. Please restore the glory of the Roma people, Walloon said respectfully. I don't know what tradition or glory. Just tell me your requirements. Power, wealth, or women? Please awaken our king, the great Pillar King Quemeles, Walloon said. Do you know what needs to be done to awaken the great Pillar King Quemeles? Zoran looked at Walloon with a serious expression. Yes, I do, Walloon nodded. Warren nodded. We need the 4 Pillar Monarchs to appear. At the same time, we need the 4 of you to work together. Without your cooperation, we won't be able to awaken the great Pillar Monarch, His Majesty Quemeles. At the same time, I need a vessel, Sean stared at Walloon. Has your Akuk family's vessel been prepared? Yes, I am that vessel. Warren opened his shirt, and the 3 Pillar Kings saw that Warren's chest was pierced by a few crystals. The 3 Pillar Kings frowned. Sean said, You should know that as a vessel, your consciousness will be erased. Are you sure you want to do this? I'm the only one left in the Akuk family, and for the sake of my family's unfulfilled wish, I have no regrets. All right, you are our awakener. We will fulfill one of your wishes before the vessel is destroyed. This is a fair trade. We have no other choice, Zoran said. However, you still have to awaken the Western Pillar King, Erewhon. I've already made the preparations. I've also scouted out the Vrykul family's residential area. Zoran looked around. He was currently in a strange mood, because the Edith family was his kin, his descendants. But now, they had to die to awaken him. But he was awakened by the slayer of his kin. But even he couldn't go against Walloon, who awakened him. Walloon could ask him to do anything at all. Of course, there was only one thing. The Romani people were all about fair trade. Even he couldn't go against the principle of trade. If there was anyone who could go against the principle of trade, it would be the great pillar King Quemeles. Because he was the one who made the rules of trade. The great pillar King Quemeles was also their master. The four pillar kings were Quemeles's four vice-kings. According to the legends, they created the world and were the creators of the world. In reality, they didn't create anything. They weren't even the first generation of Roma people. However, there were no more Roma who were stronger than them before or after them. They used their power to rule over the Roma people and each created 5 major Roma clans, all of which survive to this day. Naturally, Walloon didn't kill all the clans of the 3 pillar kings. The ones he killed were the blood relatives of the 3 clans, the awakened ones. There were even more Roma people who hadn't awakened, who didn't live in the residential area. Walloon left with the 3 pillar kings. At that moment, Sean walked up to Walloon. Her slender figure was even taller than Sean. She leaned down and whispered into Walloon's ear. "Walloon, what is your real plan? Won't you tell me?" Sean's tone was filled with temptation. Walloon calmly looked at Sean. "Great Eastern Pillar King, my goal has been revealed. I didn't hide anything. I want to resurrect the Great Pillar King Quemeles. Hee, don't lie to me. I can see the ambition in your eyes," Sean said with a smile. "My ambition is to bring back the glory of the Roma people. Is that true?" Of course, Walloon nodded and said with a serious tone. "Then, do you dare to let me conduct a soul interrogation on you?" "Yes, as long as my ancestor's dream is fulfilled, I am willing to hand over my soul to Great Eastern Pillar King." Chapter 1812. Daily Moore noticed that Nawat Singh's face had turned extremely ugly after the call. "Knots, what happened?" "That Warren, that damn Warren, he slaughtered another family settlement, the Pomies family," Knott said. Nawat said, "And they also stole the Pomies family's divine artifact. Warren attacked you and the Singer family settlement and stole the earring called Mend. Now he attacked the Pomies family and stole their divine gear. Does that mean that Warren's targets are the families that possess divine gear?" Daily Moore asked. "That's right. What other families have artifacts?" Daily Moore asked. "The Edith family and the Vrykul family," Knott said. "Do you know where they live?" Daily Moore asked. "I know the Edith family. They live on an island in the Atlantic. I know them and have been to their settlement before," Knott said. "But I don't know anyone from the Vrykul family. They also live in seclusion and rarely have contact with the outside world. There is also the Cook family where Warren is from. But since Warren is from the Cook family, then the artifact of the Cook family must have fallen into his hands." "What's the origin of these artifacts? What's their use?" "Actually, the 5 artifacts were made by the Cook family." "What? The 5 artifacts belong to the Cook family?" "No, they're just contractors," Knott said. "Actually, the materials needed for the 5 divine artifacts were shared by the 5 families. So, when the divine artifacts were created, each family received one," Nawat Singh said. Knott paused and said, "The origin of the 5 artifacts is very ancient, more than 2,000 years old. After the 5 Pillar Kings disappeared, the Roma lost their protection. At that time, the Roma had their own religion, so they wouldn't believe in other religions. So, they were naturally regarded as heretics. Then, they were constantly hunted and slaughtered. In order to stabilize the people, after a discussion, the 5 families jointly made 5 artifacts to protect the entire race. The 5 artifacts are Mend, Guidance, Fearless, Holy Spirit, and Order." "So, what are the specific uses of these 5 artifacts?" Daily Moore asked. "In my hands, Mend was used to extend the duration of continuous magic," Knott said. "The more powerful the person using Mend, the more powerful the effect. The artifact of the Edith family is Fearless, which can be immune to all curses and mind magic. Of course, this is what I know. I don't know the effects of Guidance, Holy Spirit, and Order. I only know that Guidance is in the hands of the Pomies family, Holy Spirit is in the hands of the Vrykul family, and Order is in the hands of the Cook family. So, Warren's current goal is the artifacts in the hands of the Edith family and the Reichel family? Navots nodded. But he felt something was wrong. The ancestor of Mend had taken away from his hands. But Warren still attacked the settlement of the Singh family. If it was just for the artifacts of the families, he didn't seem to need to do so. Don't you know the people of the Edith family? Inform them now. At least let them be prepared, so that the Edith family is not defenseless.
Yes.
Knots nodded and immediately called the friend of the Edith family. Hello, Knots. What's up? Do you know about the Pomies family? Pomies family? What happened to their family? Pomies asked in confusion. The Pomies family settlement was slaughtered by the madman of the Cook family. Not only the Pomies family, but even the Singh family settlement was slaughtered. I was also attacked and Mend was taken away by him.
What?
When did that happen? Edith was shocked. Just a few days ago. Navots said solemnly. You better send a message to your family. Walloon's target is likely the divine artifact of the 5 families. His next target is likely to be your Edith family or Reichel family. I understand. I'll call the family right now. Edith hung up and called the family leader. But after waiting for a long time, the call didn't go through. The phone kept dialing. Edith's heart became heavy. She changed to another family member's number. But the call still didn't go through. She changed to another one, but the result was still the same. No one answered. This made Amy's Edith have a bad premonition. Edith suddenly realized that there was a piece of news on TV. The news that was being broadcasted was about Edith Island. When the International Ocean Research ship passed by the Edith Island, they found that the island was on fire, so they landed on the island. They found that the residents of the island were slaughtered. No one survived. Strange symbols were left at the scene, like some kind of cult symbol or ritual. Edith sat on the ground. Her whole body seemed to be drained of energy. Warren! Warren! Edith roared. Not Singh's report was too late. The Edith family had already been attacked and destroyed.
It was different from Not Singh.
Nawat Singh had no relatives in the Singh family settlement. At least there were no close relatives. But Edith still had a lot of family on the island. His father, his brother, his grandmother, and his grandfather. At this moment, Nawat Singh called again. Did you see the news on the TV? Why did you only inform me now? Why didn't you inform me earlier? Edith roared uncontrollably. Not Singh was silent. This was indeed her dereliction of duty. She hadn't thought of Warren's plan beforehand. She only thought of this possibility when the Pomies family suffered the same fate. Do you know where the Reichel family settlement is? Warren's target is probably the Reichel family. Edith was silent for a moment. Then he said, in Minneapolis. Suddenly, Edith remembered. I'm going to kill Warren. I'm going to kill him. Chapter 1813. Shinli, hurry up and help. Don't play with your phone, Portia shrieked. Boss, they're your kids. You should take responsibility. What could Chun Zhao do? He had 2 big demons, Little Jerlin and Little Larissa, in his arms. 4 dog leashes hung on his body. He was holding Sindora, Mara, Coilage, and Binance. Apart from Little Jerlin and Little Larissa, the 4 of them were the youngest of the 4. Other than Binance, the other 3 were all girls. But their mischievous personalities were no less than boys. Chun Zhao's expression was lifeless. Xian Li held her phone and looked left and right in the airport. Uncle over there. Xian Li had already seen Nawat Singh's figure. Don't run anymore, or I'll get angry, Portia shouted. Sister Nawats, we're here, Shinli shouted, raising her hands. Not Singh and Edith also saw them. Aim narrowed her eyes and looked at Chun Zhao's group. Portia was clearly an ordinary person. Chun Zhao had an unusual aura, but it was too weak. It didn't feel very strong. Also, what's with the kids? The person actually had 2 kids in his arms. Is he a babysitter? Why did he bring the kids here? Chun, you're here. Nawats walked up to Chun Zhao. Why did you bring the kids? I had no choice. There's no one at home to take care of them, so I could only bring them. Chun Zhao shrugged. They shouldn't come, Nawats said. There's no shouldn't. Chun Zhao put little Larissa into Navot's arms. Do me a favor. Navot looked at the time bomb in her arms, her expression very awkward. Change little Larissa's diaper.
Huh? Me? I don't know how.
Learn. You'll need it in the future. Chun Zhao glanced at Aim beside him. Are you Navot's boyfriend? No, I'm Aim Edith from the Edith family. On the surface, Aim Edith was still polite. But when he looked at Navot Singh from the corner of his eyes, he was already furious. What kind of people were they? Is this the helper Navot Singh found? She couldn't have pulled it from the streets. Could she? Boss, I want a raise. Otherwise, I'll quit. Portia complained. If you talk about a raise again, I'll deduct your salary. Chun Zhao pulled little Glinsaporia into his arms. Uncle, I want to drink Coke. Looking at Chun Zhao, Binance tugged at Chun Zhao's shirt. Chun Zhao searched around and found a credit card.
Do you know how to use it?
Binance shook his head. Chun Zhao searched again. He didn't seem to have any cash on him. Portia, do you have any cash?
No.
Then go buy a few cans of Coke. Boss, you're empty-handed now. You want me to buy it? Boss, you're empty-handed. Do you pay my salary or do I pay yours? Portia's cheeks twitched. I'll go. Looking at Chun Zhao, Ames whispered to Navot Singh. I want to kill him.
Can I?
Air. Navot rubbed his forehead. I want to kill him too. The plane arrived. Everyone finally boarded successfully. Target, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Although Minneapolis wasn't well known, it was considered a big city in the United States. It had a population of 400,000 and a GDP of $200 billion. However, the kids were still making noise after boarding the plane. Chun Zhao really had a headache. Apart from Shinli Singh, he cast Banshee's charm on all the other kids. At some point, the entire cabin quieted down. Boss, you know hypnosis? Portia looked at Chun Zhao in surprise. Chun Zhao walked to the kids and snapped his fingers. Then, they all fell asleep. I'm a doctor, Chun Zhao said matter-of-factly. Edith had been paying attention to Chun Zhao. When he saw Chun Zhao use Banshee's charm, he couldn't help but frown. Is he a spiritual spiritualist? Spiritual spiritualists had always been criticized for their combat abilities. Their spells were quite effective against normal people. But against people with stronger wills, the effect would start to weaken. Against spiritualists, the effect would be even worse. The stronger the spiritualist's magic was, the worse the effect would be. As long as one had 1/3 of the spellcaster's magic, the spiritualist's spells would have a hard time being effective. Of course, it wasn't completely useless. It could only be said that hypnosis spells would be much less effective. On the other hand, some mental stimulation and mental curses were still effective. For example, mental whip could disturb the enemy in battle. They arrived at the Minneapolis International Airport. Everyone was carrying 2 children, even Xin Singh. The kids were too sleepy. They went to the hotel first. Everyone was a bit tired. Ames didn't seem to be in a hurry to go to the Vreichel family's residence. Ames, where's the Vreichel family's residence? Ames glanced at Chun Zhao. After some hesitation, he said, St. Anthony Waterfall. Aren't we going today? No, we can't today, Ames said. Edith said, the Vreichel family hid their settlement in the waterfall and cast magic. There are only 2 ways to find the entrance. One is to open it from the inside, and the other is that the entrance only opens once on the 15th night of every month, and it only opens for an hour. Is there a difference between opening it every day and once a month? Chun Zhao pursed his lips. If it really attracts enemies, they won't be 1 or 2 days late. They sealed the entrance, but that doesn't mean they can't receive information from the outside, Ames said. The Vreichel family's people in the residence must know that Warren is going to harm them, so they'll definitely be prepared. They'll also look for reinforcements. Warren will also return in failure this time. Whatever, Navot Singh said. Tomorrow is the 15th. In the Vreichel residence, figures swayed at the exit. Maggie, what are you doing at the exit? Maggie Vreichel turned to look at the person behind her. Geraldine, why are you here? Geraldine Vreichel and Maggie Vreichel stared at each other in silence. Suddenly, Maggie Vreichel raised an eyebrow. You're with him too? /35_. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1814. Not long after, Maggie Vreichel and Geraldine Vreichel stood in front of a stone array formed by dozens of stone pillars. Maggie Vreichel glanced at Geraldine Vreichel. I didn't expect you to be Warren's man. You too. I didn't expect it either, Geraldine Vreichel said indifferently. Maggie Vreichel was the daughter of the patriarch, but she betrayed the Vreichel group. Because he can fulfill everyone's wish, Maggie Vreichel said matter-of-factly. What wish did you make to him? Geraldine Vreichel didn't speak. She looked at the stone array and asked, How do I remove the space displacement? You can't remove the space displacement. Otherwise, this place will be directly connected to the outside world and exposed to the public. By then, even Warren won't be able to do anything, Maggie Vreichel said. If you don't remove the space displacement, then what do? It's very simple. Move that stone pillar to that position, then move that stone pillar to this side. That's strange. This isn't a Western magic array, right? This is China's feng shui. Guide the wind. Maggie Vreichel said, Orion as the chess piece, Big Dipper as the general, Dragon Mountain, Ziwei as the command. What are you muttering? Don't interrupt me. Do as I say. Move that stone here. This is to change the array so that one can only enter, but not leave. Geraldine Vreichel silently followed Maggie Veichel's instructions. At this moment, a hole appeared at the other end of the stone array. You can come in, Mr. Warren, Maggie Vreichel said with her phone in her hand. From the hole, a few figures appeared. Warren, Zoran, Sean, and Bion walked in from outside the hole. Sean looked at the stone array in front of him and said in surprise, It's amazing.
There was no such magic array in the past.
What system of magic is this? Sir Sean, this is an Eastern magic array. It's a completely different system from Western magic, Warren said. At this moment, Maggie Vreichel and Geraldine Vreichel walked over. Mr. Warren, I've done what I asked. Now it's time to keep my promise, Maggie Vreichel said. Killing her father, that's all? Warren asked. Yes.
Sure.
Warren nodded. This was not a difficult task, and he had originally intended to do so. Where is it? It's in his hands, too. Geraldine Vick was a little surprised. Maggie Vicker's wish was to kill the chief. He was her father. He didn't understand what kind of grudge the father and daughter had. So much so that Maggie Vick would rather collude with outsiders, even if it meant risking the annihilation of his entire clan. He wanted his father to die. Geraldine, what is your wish? Warren asked. Of course, a trade had to be fair. Warren also had to abide by the rules of the trade. He really wanted to learn from the villains in the movies. After achieving his goal, he directly killed the person. But he couldn't do that. Of course, he couldn't accept anything that Warren couldn't do. Revive my sister. Warren closed his eyes and thought for a while. I can't do it. You just can't do it now, Geraldine Vick said. Warren frowned slightly.
He seemed to know something.
Even if I succeed, I can't do it, Warren said. No one can revive the dead. You just need to summon my sister's soul back after the plan is completed, Geraldine Vick said. Where did your sister's soul go?
Hell.
How did she die?
She didn't die. I have kept her body intact.
She violated the clan rules, so her soul was sent to hell. I see. Warren nodded. If his plan really succeeded, then he could indeed summon his sister's soul out of hell. The premise was that his sister's soul was still intact. Are they your men? Maggie Vicker asked. No, they are God, the great pillar king of our Roma people, Warren said indifferently. Geraldine Vick looked at Sean, Byron, and Zoran. His eyes flickered. He kept staring at the three as if he wanted to use all his strength to pierce through them. If there was anyone in this world who could know Warren's plan, it was him. Geraldine Vreichel even guessed the details of Walloon's plan. Are they the legendary Pillar King? Maggie Vreichel looked at Walloon as if he was a lunatic. Pillar King? Let's not talk about whether the legend was true. Even if the Pillar King really existed, it was more than 2,000 years ago. Maji Vic didn't believe that the legendary Pillar King would really appear. 3 sirs, you can start. Warren looked at the 3 Pillar Kings. Sorry for troubling you. At this moment, the Vicker family's residential area was silent. The silence was frightening. There wasn't even a sound of insects. Let me do it. At this moment, Shane walked out with a ball of string in her hand. Sean suddenly threw the ball of string out. The ball of string flew into the air, and the end of the string suddenly shot into the darkness. Sean took out the same ball of string and repeated the same trick. Then, Sean took out the third, the fifth. These strings traveled in the darkness and rushed into the residential area in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, the rope that had been released from a small ball of string had wrapped itself tightly around the house. In the end, Sean gave it a tug. The entire house and the owner inside were instantly killed. At the same time, the entire residential area suddenly sounded an alarm. Not good. Someone entered here. Enemy attack. Enemy attack. The Vickers in the residential area were instantly like ants on a hot pan. The 5 balls of string that Sean threw were obviously not ordinary strings. Each ball of string had a different color. The red string was burning with flames. The silver-white string was like frost. The white string was electrified. The black string was poisonous. All the strings crisscrossed and covered the entire residential area. These crisscross strings were more like a nest. Whether it was an adult or a child, whether it was a man or a woman. But in front of Sean, he seemed so weak and fragile. Sean was the first to be awakened, but it was the first time Warren saw Sean in action. It wasn't shocking, and it wasn't colorful either. But Sean's magic was filled with endless killing intent. What kind of magic is this? Geraldine asked, puzzled. It's a familiar. Sir Sean isn't awakened, Warren said. Among the 5 Pillar Kings, 3 were magic awakened and 2 were bloodline awakened. Sean's magic was purely to control objects. Chapter 1815. Sean, you're too slow. Bion walked out. His movements were slow, as if he was an old man past his prime. But with every step he took, his appearance became younger. With every step he took, his body grew bigger. When he reached Sean's side, he had changed a lot. He was no longer a decaying old man, but a strong young man. Bion's body emitted a strong aura as his palms began to accumulate and compress magic. Everyone was shocked when they saw Bion's movement. Everyone felt like they were facing a walking nuclear bomb. Bion's movement was very similar to the Kamehameha in the manga. Bion's palms suddenly pushed forward. Just like the Kamehameha, a white light retreated from Bion's palms. Rumble, the entire residential area was razed to the ground, leaving a shocking crater in the center of the residential area. It was as if it was hit by a missile. Maji Vicker and Geraldine Vicker, who were standing at the back, almost lost their balance. Their faces were filled with horror and disbelief. Whether it was Sean or Byron, both of them were so terrifying and unbelievable. Sean alone could slaughter the entire Vicker family's residential area. After all, there were more than 300 people here. Every single one of them, regardless of gender or age, was a spiritualist. But when faced with Sean, they were helpless. Bion was even more terrifying. Just one move, and he razed this place to the ground. Bion, using magic like this will only shorten your existence, Zoran said. It doesn't matter. This awakening isn't in my plan anyway. Bion's body gradually shrunk and returned to his old man appearance. Warren glanced at Bion from the corner of his eyes and walked into the ruins. Just then, a figure rushed out from the ruins. Maji Vicker's father, Wilson Vicker. Wilson Vicker's body was covered in a thin layer of light. The light was like a burning flame. I'm going to kill you, Wilson Vicker roared. Warren didn't seem surprised when he saw Wilson Vicker. Titan's power. Warren took a deep breath, and his body instantly became powerful. Warren punched Wilson Vicker in the face. Wilson Vicker was thrown several meters away, but he stood up and scathed. Viper's whip. Warren's arms suddenly stretched out like a long whip, lashing heavily on Wilson Vicker's body. The halo on Wilson Vrika's body was almost shattered, but it soon stabilized. Teeth of the hungry wolf. Warren launched another attack before Wilson Vicker could react. A pair of fawn-like spikes suddenly shot out from Wilson Vrika's back.
Ah!
Wilson Vrika screamed. However, this wasn't the end for him. Warren's next round of attacks had already arrived. Bind of Thorns. A thorny vine drilled out from the ground under Wilson Vrika's feet and bound him tightly. Wilson Vicker was already panicking. Walloon's attacks were too sharp, and it felt like he knew every move Kieran was about to make. All the attacks were aimed at his weak points, and they were a step ahead of him. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. Wilson Vicker wanted to struggle, but his body was fixed by the thorny vine, so he couldn't activate his magic. Warren walked in front of Wilson Vicker. Warren still had a faint smile on his face, and at the same time, he took off the ring on Wilson Vicker's finger. "Is this the Holy Spirit? Give it back to me, you bastard!" Wilson Vicker roared angrily. However, Warren didn't seem to hear Wilson Vicker's roar. He wore the Holy Spirit ring on his finger. He felt the power bestowed by the Holy Spirit ring. "Mr. Wilson, you've let the Holy Spirit ring be covered in dust. You don't even know how to use the Holy Spirit ring. All of you are the same. You've tarnished the name of Ancestor Cook's gift," Warren said as a matter of fact. "Now, I will take back what belongs to our family. This is our Vicker family's, not yours." Wilson Vicker roared angrily. Warren glanced behind Wilson Vicker. "He's yours." Wilson Vicker was tied up at this moment. He couldn't see behind him. However, he vaguely sensed something. "Maggie? It's you? You damned little bastard." "Poochie." Wilson Vicker lowered his head and looked at his pierced chest. His mouth started to vomit blood. "Maggie, you dare?" "Yes, I dare." Maggie Vicker pulled out the weapon in her hand and stabbed it again. Wilson Vicker struggled several times before he finally breathed his last. "Miss Maggie, please don't damage your father's body." Warren looked at Maggie Vicker with a smile. Now, their deal was completely completed. Maggie Vicker would also be completely loyal to him. "Yes, Mr. Warren." Maggie Vicker pulled out her sword and silently retreated to the side. At this moment, Geraldine Vicker, Sean, Byron, and Zoran walked over. Geraldine Vicker looked at Warren. Warren was laying Wilson Vicker's body on the ground. Then, he stabbed a crystal into Wilson Vicker's chest. "Did you make that soul device?" Geraldine Vicker asked. Warren glanced at Geraldine Vicker. "You also know alchemy magic?" Geraldine Vicker continued. "It looks like the product of the combination of Eastern refining and Egyptian soul binding." Warren began to prepare the magic circle, and then placed the body in the center of the magic circle. It was the same process as waking up Zoran. Under Warren's magic spell, Wilson Vicker's body suddenly opened its eyes. Maggie Vicker was shocked and immediately pulled out her weapon. "Put away your weapon. He's not your father. He's your ancestor now." "Erewhon, long time no see." Sean took the lead to greet. "Western Pillar King, Erewhon Vicker." Erewhon looked at his body. It was the same as when Zoran woke up. He was familiarizing himself with his body. "Which one of you woke me up?" "It's the kid from the Cook family." Erewhon looked at Warren with his bull head. "Tell me your purpose." "I need you to wake up my ancestor, Great Pillar King Quemeles," Warren said. Erewhon glanced at the other 3 Pillar Kings. He couldn't tell if he was happy or angry. "Seems like you're mentally prepared." "Yes, I'm ready." Warren nodded. "Then let's do it here. /35_9 Heaven's God King. Chapter 1816. Warren wore 5 artifacts: Heal, Fearless, Guidance, Order, and Holy Spirit. These 5 artifacts were an earring, a pendant, a bracelet, a mask, and a ring. Sean, Bion, Zoran, and Erewhon stood in 4 different directions. The magic needed to summon the soul of the Great Pillar King was far beyond what ordinary people could bear. Only when the other 4 Pillar Kings joined forces would they have enough magic to summon the Great Pillar King. The magic of the 4 Pillar Kings was surging. Each of them had a magic that could make people 100 times stronger. Geraldine, what are they doing? Resurrecting our god of creation, great pillar King Quemeles, said Geraldine Vreichel. Resurrection. Maji Vreichel looked at Geraldine Vreichel in confusion. Yes, resurrection. But why can he still be resurrected after more than 2,000 years? Is it because the soul of God can't be destroyed? Maji Vreichel was puzzled. Let's not talk about whether Quemeles is a god or not. Even if he really is a god, I'm afraid his soul will be destroyed in 2,000 years. Then why? Do you know why Quemeles is called the god of creation? I don't understand. Because he really created a world. To be precise, it's a small world, a world that belongs only to him. His plan was perfect, but he overestimated his faith. There were very few souls that were truly qualified to be taken into heaven, causing the heaven he created to be unable to be maintained. Quemeles also died to maintain this heaven. After his death, his soul entered this heaven, but he completely closed the heaven he created and finally completely sealed his soul in this heaven. Geraldine Vreichel paused and said, Now, they are summoning Quemeles' soul from heaven and then using Warren's body as the host, temporarily resurrecting Quemeles. Host? As the host, his soul and consciousness should also be erased, right? Geraldine Vreichel nodded. That's right. So the object of my allegiance soon became Quemeles? Hee. Geraldine Vreichel smiled and did not answer.
How do you know all this?
Maji Vicar asked in confusion. These are secrets, and I happen to be the next patriarch successor, said Geraldine Vreichel. Maji Vicar looked at Geraldine Vicar in surprise. As the daughter of the current patriarch, Maji Vicar knew a lot of things. For example, Geraldine Vic's matter. In order to resurrect his sister, Geraldine Vreichel had been studying alchemy and necromancy. There were also many other systems of magic. As long as it could be of use, he would study it. Of course, research and learning were two different things. However, this also made Geraldine Viact the most outstanding and knowledgeable person among the younger generation. Among his peers, no one could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Many people in the Vreichel family liked to do research, no matter what aspect it was. The Roma once said of the Vreichel family, a family full of evil and order. In order to carry out all kinds of research, the Vreichel family often had no bottom line. Many taboo research was never taboo in their eyes. Then why did you say it now? Is it still necessary to keep it a secret now? Geraldine Vreichel smiled. The Vreichel family has been destroyed. Both of us are now just stray dogs. What about your sister? Her soul entered the heaven created by Quemeles. She is a firm believer of Quemeles. Geraldine Vreichel said, So, as long as Quemeles is resurrected, then he naturally has the ability to bring my sister's soul out. No wonder. Maji Vreichel looked at the center of the field. Those 4 people are really the 4 Pillar Kings? Yes, at least their souls are the 4 Pillar Kings. Geraldine Vreichel nodded. Their souls are also in heaven. How did your sister die? Maji Vreichel asked. If you don't want to say, I won't force you. In order to pursue the secret of Quemeles, Geraldine Vreichel said. She is a more fanatical researcher than me. Maji Vreichel could understand this. Most people in the Vreichel family were like this. They would do anything to do research. The reason why Maji Vreichel hated her father. It was because her father had done inhumane, forbidden experiments on her mother. The 4 Pillar Kings emitted shocking magic power. This was just the magic power that was dissipated. The amount of magic they consumed was even more shocking. The amount of magic they released in an instant was almost equivalent to all the magic a normal person could release at once. However, their magic recovery speed was also shocking. Even so, their magic power still couldn't keep up with the speed of consumption. Wah! Little Larissa suddenly burst into tears.
Huh?
Chun Zhao suddenly opened his eyes. Chun Zhao immediately stood up and comforted little Larissa. In that instant, Chun Zhao felt an aura permeating the air. Surging, powerful, Chun Zhao looked at the time. It was only 1 in the morning. He carried the crying little Larissa out of the room. Just then, Nawat Singh, who lived in the next room, walked out. Then Edith also walked out of the room opposite. The three glanced at each other. Edith's expression was solemn. Scary, too scary. What was with that magic power? Perhaps all the spiritualists in the city had sensed that terrifying magic power. At this moment, the children in the other rooms were also awakened and ran out of their rooms. They were also awakened by the scary magic power. Oh, what is that? It's too scary. Shinli Singh stared at Chen Zhao in fear. There seems to be something incredible, Chen Zhao said calmly. Something incredible has appeared. Where did it come from? The aura came from the northeast, Chen Zhao said. Northeast? That's where St. Anthony Waterfall is. Edith said seriously. Is it the Vrykul family's residence? Let's go there and take a look, Chen Zhao said. Go there?
Now.
Something must have happened to the Vrykul family. I just don't know if it's Warren's doing. Chapter 1817. Portia opened the door angrily. Boss. Portia's first voice was very loud. However, when she saw little Larissa in Chen Zhao's arms, she immediately lowered her voice. Boss, look at the time. What time is it now? Portia growled at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao shoved little Larissa into Portia's arms. What? I'll leave little Larissa and Jerlin to you. Boss. Portia glanced outside. Apart from little Jerlin and Larissa, all the kids were awake. Emu Edith and Nawat Singh were also standing outside the door. Boss, what are you going to do? Enjoy the scenery, Chen Zhao answered seriously. Late at night? You have so many kids? Is there a problem? Of course there was a problem. Portia stared at Chen Zhao with dead fish eyes. Boss, are you serious? Do I look like I'm joking? I think you're just joking. Okay, take care of little Jerlin and Larissa for me. Boss, I think you're making arrangements for your funeral. Do you still want your salary for this month? Chen Zhao looked at Chen Zhao with a dark expression. Oh, okay. Boss, have a safe journey. Chen Zhao teased little Larissa, who had fallen asleep again. Little Larissa pursed her lips and waved her short hands, hugging Portia's arms. He glared at Portia viciously before turning around and leaving. Portia walked in front with the kids. Edith and Chen Zhao followed behind. Why do you have so many kids? Edith frowned at Chen Zhao. Revenge, Chen Zhao said. Revenge? What can they do? I'll beat their enemies half to death first, and then leave the rest to them. The youngest is only 5 or 6. You want them to kill people? Of course not. I don't want them to kill people. They can't kill people anyway. We don't even know how strong our enemies are. You have so many kids with you. They might be affected. Edith still didn't agree with Chen Zhao's method. In his opinion, bringing kids into battle, no matter what their intentions were, it would increase the risk. No one can hurt my child in front of me, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Suddenly, 3 people appeared at the entrance of the hotel. Chen Zhao recognized one of them. It was Okula Singh, sister of Nawat Singh. But Nards Hingis knew them, Barbara Rush, Dominguez. When Nawat saw the 3 of them, he immediately became vigilant. Knots, where are you going?
Move, Okula.
I don't want to fight you now. Nawats looked at the 3 coldly. Chen Zhao walked forward. Okula glanced at Chen Zhao. They had met once when Nawat Singh was hospitalized. Back then, Okula thought that Chen Zhao was a doctor. Knots, do you need me? If you can't do it, Chen Zhao asked. Who do you think you are? Okula stared at Chen Zhao fiercely. Chen, it's okay. Thanks. Nawat's shingles stopped him. She didn't want Chen Zhao to fight her sister. She didn't want that to happen. Otherwise, the consequences would be very serious. Okula Singh looked at her sister. Knots, leave here. Okula looked at her sister seriously. You don't understand what you're facing. I defeated Warren before. I can still do it now. You don't understand. You don't understand at all. You were able to defeat him last time, because his plan hadn't started yet. Okula shook his head and said, now his plan has succeeded. What plan does he have? Knots asked. He revived the 4 Pillar Kings, Okula said. And he has the power of the great Pillar Kings. Knots give up. You can't defeat Mr. Warren. Barbara was from the same family as them. She also didn't want Knots to take a fearless risk. Give up? Ask these kids. Will they give up? Okula, Barbara, and Domingley suddenly realized that the kids before them were actually the juniors of their family. Since they're here, I can't let you take the risk. You're going to die. I know what I'm doing, Knots said. Knots, you really don't need me to do anything? No, Knots said. You guys go first. I'll deal with the three. Oh, Chen, I'll lend you something. Okay. Chun Zhao nodded. Then hurry up and follow us. Edith and Chun Zhao sent the children onto a bus. Edith said worriedly as he drove. Can Nawats solve the problem alone? Of course. You should trust her, Chun Zhao said.
Huh?
She's already back. Thud. Edith suddenly heard something fall from the roof of the car. Just then, Knots jumped down from the top of the bus. Knots. Edith could not understand. He didn't expect Knots to solve the problem so quickly. The three men were obviously not weak, but Nawat's shingles came back so quickly. Chun Zhao remembered that Knots was a perception-type witch. Since when was her combat power so strong? You went too easy, Chun Zhao said. Knots couldn't do anything about it. After all, she was her sister. She didn't understand why Okula, Barbara, and Domingley were willing to be Warren's lackeys. In her eyes, the three of them had never been evil, especially her own sister. So, she couldn't go too hard. She didn't even dare to use Jin form. Chun Zhao looked behind him. There was a car following. Knots, you really went too easy. They're following us. Behind him, Okula's face was filled with shock and anger. Drive faster. We have to stop them. We can't let Warren see them.
They'll die.
Barbara and Domingley were also worried. After all, the car in front was the last hope of the Singh family. But they knew how terrifying Warren was. Especially Warren now. Even if they weren't beside him, they could still feel his vast magic power. It was a power that made people feel despair. They couldn't even muster the courage to resist. The people in front of them were basically seeking death by going against Warren.
They couldn't let them die.
Definitely not. Chapter 1818. Chun Zhao leaned against the window of the bus and looked at Okula Singh, who had caught up to them. Hey, little girl, you should listen to your sister. If you catch up again, I won't go easy on you. In the back seat of the sports car, Barbara had already activated the Fury Witch's spell. A ball of flames shot toward Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao clapped his hands, and the flames exploded in his palm. Barbara stared at Chun Zhao in surprise. Her attack was ineffective. She hadn't used her full strength, but it was still very easy to kill someone. Even if the target was a spiritualist, the power was enough to heavily injure them. Okula, aren't defensive spells a little too common these days? Barbara Rush said, a little annoyed. When she'd encountered Nawats before, her attack had been useless. Now, it was useless against a random man. Chun Zhao looked at the three people in the sports car. I think it's better to kill you now. Just then, a hand pressed down on Chun Zhao's raised arm. Nawats looked at Chun Zhao. Chun, just let them follow. They can't do anything. Fine. Chun Zhao knew that Nawats had softened again. But he could understand. If it was him, facing his family, they would also be as indecisive as Nawat Singh. Finally, with the combined efforts of the four Pillar Monarchs, a figure emerged from the center of the magic formation. When they saw the figure in the center, the four Pillar Monarchs finally exhaled deeply. They'd finally succeeded. The four Pillar Monarchs knelt on the ground. Greetings, Your Majesty. Even though the Roma had never established a country, in the hearts of the four Pillar Monarchs, they were loyal to the true king. Whether it was his power, his breadth of mind, or even his knowledge, everything about him was so admirable. Maji Vraiku and Geraldine Vraiku knelt on the ground too. They looked at their incorporeal bodies' soul forms. Then Kumaras looked at Walloon standing before him. Kumaras touched his chin, and a smile appeared on his face. I can see your past, your future, your ambition, and your dreams. Although I don't like what you do, I still respect you, Quimera said. Warren knelt on one knee. Greetings, Your Majesty, Great Pillar King. Although I know your goal, I don't intend to stop you. Do you want my power? I'll give it to you, all of it. Quimera suddenly slammed his palm towards Walloon. In an instant, a surging power was injected into Walloon's body. It was a power greater than Warren could imagine. The crystal pillar in front of his chest burst out with a strong light and was almost instantly filled with magic. A wave of energy spread out from Warren's body and continued to spread outwards. Like a shockwave, it spread throughout the entire city. In an instant, the entire city fell into darkness. All the buildings and the lights on the streets had disappeared. It even affected 3 or 4 nearby cities. The impact covered a radius of several hundred kilometers. The pain lasted for several minutes, but to Warren, it felt as long as centuries. However, everything was finally over. Walloon looked at his hands in disbelief. At this moment, Warren felt that the pain just now was nothing. All the hard work was nothing. It was all worth it. He finally got his reward. This power, this godlike power, he couldn't believe it at all. Warren took a deep breath and took off Heal, Holy Spirit, Order, Fearless, and Guidance. Geraldine Vickers' eyes glowed. He's Warren now, or Quimera's? Warren, he's Warren. His gaze hasn't changed, Geraldine Vickers said.
Why?
Shouldn't his body be occupied by Quimera's? Why hasn't his consciousness and soul been erased? He can't possibly resist Great Pillar King's consciousness. Because of the things in his hands, Geraldine Vickers said. Those are the artifacts of the 5 families, right? Maji Vickers asked. Yes, they're all made by the Cook family. Those things, can they prevent Warren from losing control of his body to Quimera's? Fearless, it's immune to all fear and also immune to all mind control. Order, it's an artifact that maintains oneself, undisturbed by outsiders, guidance, and gives the most powerful protection to the soul. Holy Spirit strengthens all attributes of self. Geraldine Vickers said, there's also Heal, which doubles the power of the other 4 artifacts. So this is the reason why he took the 4 artifacts. To take Quimera's power, but not be controlled by Quimera's. Although Walloon had calculated everything, he didn't expect that even though Quimela's was in soul form, he still couldn't be manipulated by Walloon. But he still succeeded? Quimera's power was taken by him. No, Quimera's gave it to him. He didn't take it. At this moment, the 5 artifacts floated in front of Warren. Warren began to unleash unparalleled power. It was so powerful that it was shocking. Even Walloon himself was astonished. However, such a powerful force did not seem to be able to dry up. Great, this is the power. It's fascinating power. Under Warren's powerful power, the 5 artifacts began to gradually merge. What is he doing? Is he destroying the 5 artifacts? No, on the contrary, he's showing the true face of the artifacts, Geraldine Vickers said. True face? I don't understand. Your father once studied the artifact Holy Spirit in his hand. Geraldine Vickers' eyes lit up. He found that the Holy Spirit is actually incomplete. But the Holy Spirit has never been damaged since it appeared. How could it be damaged? So there's only one possibility. It's not that the master of a certain era destroyed the artifact, but the artifact has always been incomplete since it was created. The original purpose of the Cook family creating the 5 artifacts was to combine them into one. Maybe, since 2,000 years ago, the Cook family has been waiting for this opportunity, Maji Vickers said. I really can't believe it. After waiting for 2,000 years for a huge plan to seize the power of a god, this plan has finally been completed in Warren's hands. He has the power of a god, and at the same time, he has a true divine artifact. No one in this world can defeat him. The 5 artifacts turned into a near-perfect golden armor and automatically put it on Warren's body, /35_. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1819. A halo appeared behind Walloon's head. Right now, he looked like a real god.
No, not like. He was a god.
Walloon exhaled the turbid air in his body. Brick looked at Sean, Bion, Zoran, and Erewhon. You already know my real goal, and you've completed the deal. Are you going to leave now? Or are you going to stop me? Walloon would not underestimate the four Pillar Kings. However, he was not afraid of them either. He was stronger than them. He could clearly feel the difference. Sean had a faint smile on his face. No need. His Majesty Quemaras said that we don't need to do anything. We only need to wait to return to heaven. Before that, please control us like His Majesty. Sean's smile was as dazzling as summer flowers. Walloon did not understand that he had Quemaras' power. However, he could not understand Quemaras' intentions. He did not understand his words either. He also did not understand what the four Pillar Kings meant. They already knew that he'd lied to them. However, they seemed to be a bit too generous. They had completely forgotten about the past and were still willing to be loyal to him. They had power but no cultivation. It was awkward. Just then, a voice came from the back. The people from the Vrykul family must be crazy. Every time they come in and out, it's like they're taking a shower. It's like a water curtain cave. Chun Zhao combed his hair and shook off the water on his body. Everyone looked behind them and saw a few people walking out from the entrance of the cave. However, the combination of this group of people was really strange. 3 adults and a group of children. Who are you? Get out of here. Maji, Vrykul yelled. Walloon waved his hand and said indifferently, Maji, move. Walloon had already seen Nawat Singer. Clearly, they were here for revenge. Yes, Mr. Walloon. So ugly. Who designed this armor? Chun Zhao looked at the dazzling armor on Walloon. He really felt that it was ugly. Extremely ugly. Walloon's expression started to turn ugly. This was the masterpiece of the Cook family's ancestor. It was also a divine artifact that he was proud of. But now, it was being belittled by a stranger. What made him feel the most ashamed was that now that everyone's eyes were on him, it made him feel even more ashamed. Warren clenched his fists. He felt like he was going to have a cerebral hemorrhage. But as soon as he got angry, the mana in his body surged like a tsunami. The 4 Pillar Kings frowned and took a step back, although they were not as powerful as the current Warren. However, they wouldn't be scared off by Warren's aura. It was just that Warren's strength had exceeded their expectations. Warren's current strength had already surpassed Quemaras'. Edith's expression changed drastically. What a terrifying aura. Just the aura alone was enough to make him unable to resist it. Who will kill him? Warren asked indifferently. At this moment, Geraldine Vrykul stepped forward. Mr. Warren, please give me a chance to express my loyalty to you. Warren nodded slightly. Go. Don't let me down. Edith also took a step forward, looking like he was ready to die for justice. Geraldine, I didn't expect you to be a traitor. Edith knew Geraldine Vrykul. Geraldine Vrykul smiled disapprovingly. Stop talking. Just do it. If you can't even beat me, you'd better leave. I don't want to kill you. This was the only thing Geraldine Vrykul could do. In your dreams, Edith growled. His body suddenly split into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8. Oh, Chun Zhao exclaimed. Edith's spell was very similar to the doppelganger. But upon closer inspection, he realized that something was wrong. Edith's clones had indeed become 8, but the 8 clones only had 1/8 of the original's power. The original's power was also 1/8. In other words, Edith's spell had actually split his power into 8 parts. However, when Edith's clones and original fought, Chun Zhao realized that the clone's spell wasn't without its advantages. Both his main body and his doppelgangers had unique attributes. His main body was water element, while his other clones were lightning element, voodoo element, fire element, wind element, earth element, strength element, speed element, and stealth element. The 8 clones attacked at the same time. The scene was as beautiful as a painting, brilliant and colorful. Whoosh! What a beautiful and magnificent spell. Then he turned to the kids beside him and asked, Do you want Coke and popcorn? Geraldine Vicker, on the other hand, dodged Edith's intensive attacks in a slightly awkward manner. But at this time, Edith's magic flaws were also revealed. The attack power was too weak. Geraldine Reichel was obviously hit by magic several times, but he was only lightly injured. Not a single spell could seriously injure him or make him lose the ability to fight. You really shouldn't use this spell in front of me. I know you too well, especially your weakness. Edith's expression grew more and more solemn. The last person he wanted to face was Geraldine Viact. If necromancy was said to be the strangest of all magic systems, then Geraldine Reichel was the weirdest psychic among all the psychics. Suddenly, one of Edith's clones shrieked and turned into smoke. Edith froze, his face full of astonishment. He had no idea how Chenjiao did it. How had his clones been destroyed? Then the second, the third, the fourth at the seventh clone, only Edith's main body was left. Isn't it weird? Geraldine Viact looked at her friend with a smile. This is my newly developed spell, Psionic Tentacles. It transforms magic into invisible tentacles. This spell is very similar to Countless Ties, Chenjiao murmured. Geraldine Vicker seemed to have heard Chenjiao's words and glanced at him. When she saw Chenjiao, she almost vomited blood. Chenjiao was sitting cross-legged on the ground. The kids beside him were the same. Everyone had Coke and popcorn in their hands. Did they come here to watch a movie? Uncle go. The kids cheered at the same time. You can't beat him, Chenjiao called. You better back off. You can't sense his tentacles unless you can open your psionic vision. Psionic vision. Edith could tell that Chenjiao was reminding him, but he couldn't do it. He looked at Geraldine Viact, unwilling to give up. You should listen to him. You can't beat me. Chapter 1820. Edith was discouraged, but he was also desperate. He'd been pessimistic about this trip, especially after seeing Walloon's terrifying and peerless pressure. He no longer held any hope in this matter. Now, he couldn't even beat Geraldine Reichel. He couldn't stop Walloon and take revenge. Edith couldn't see any hope. Geraldine Reichel looked at Chenjiao. Mister over there, do you think you can beat me? Any kid I send can beat you up. Do you believe me? Chenjiao said casually. Geraldine Reichel smiled but didn't say anything. She looked at Chenjiao calmly. Kilo, stand up and beat him up, Chenjiao said. Kilo, who was happily eating popcorn and sipping Coke, heard the bad news in the blink of an eye. Uncle, you want me to go? Yeah, go. Teach him a lesson for me. Everyone was stunned by Chenjiao's decision. How could such a young boy defeat Geraldine? Do you believe me? Chenjiao asked seriously. Kilo didn't believe him, but he couldn't say it. He looked at Chenjiao with a troubled expression. Good. I'll take it that you agree if you don't say anything. Chenjiao grabbed Kilo's shoulder. Go. Kilo was thrown before Geraldine Reichel. For a moment, Kilo didn't know what to do. Chenjiao sat cross-legged and supported his face with one arm. Smiling, he looked at Kilo. In Chenjiao's small world, spiritual qi was silently seeping into Kilo's body. Others couldn't, but Kilo could. Because Kilo was an enhancer, his body was stronger than normal people. Of course, Chenjiao didn't drink too much. Edith's face was green. Mr. Chen, what are you doing? Are you sending your child to die? Just because you lost doesn't mean others will. Chenjiao glanced at and then at Kilo. Kilo, beat him up. Don't give me face. Kilo was helpless. Facing the powerful Geraldine Reichel, he could only brace himself. Ha. Kilo raised his arm and hammered at Geraldine Viact. There was a smile on Geraldine Reichel's face. Her psionic tentacles had already wrapped around Kilo's limbs. Luo suddenly felt his limbs grow sluggish, but it didn't affect his movements. Crow suddenly exerted his strength and punched Geraldine Viact. Geraldine Reichel's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly put up a barrier in front of him. Sizzle. Crow's fist slammed into the wall, producing a sharp, ear-piercing sound. Everyone had an uncomfortable expression on their faces. Then he saw the barrier in front of Geraldine Vreichel was falling apart rapidly. What great power! Edith and Geraldine Vicker were old acquaintances. He had seen Geraldine Vreikel's magic. He knew that this barrier was so strong that it could even withstand the impact of a truck. But it was shattered by a child. Kilo's momentum had weakened, but he was still as ferocious as ever. It landed heavily on Geraldine's face. Geraldine Vreichel covered her face and sat on the ground, astonishment written all over her face. Everyone else had the same expression. Astonishment. Including Kilo, they all had the same expression. So weak. Tilting his head, Kilo looked at Geraldine Vreichel. This sentence not only embarrassed Geraldine Vicker, but it also embarrassed Edith. After all, he'd been defeated by Geraldine Vreichel. Kilo turned his head to look at Chen Zhao. Clap. Chen Zhao led the applause, and the other children followed. Kilo was instantly filled with energy. Kilo, be more arrogant, Chen Zhao called. Come on, you minions. Kilo made an indecent gesture. Fuck, don't give me the middle finger, Chen Zhao immediately shouted. Geraldine Vreichel's face darkened. These people were too arrogant. Saying that, he was about to walk forward, but Geraldine Vreichel stopped him. You can't beat him, Geraldine Vreichel said. Geraldine Vreichel was also surprised. He didn't feel that Kilo was very powerful. Yet Kilo could ignore his magic. He didn't get any answers from Kilo either. Just then, Bion walked out. Brat, let me exchange a move with you. As long as you can survive my attack, I will admit defeat. Just like before, Byron became younger with every step he took. At the same time, he also emitted a horrifying pressure. Compared to Geraldine Vreichel, his pressure was 10 times, 100 times stronger. Edith's expression turned solemn. Kilo also took a step back unconsciously. Unlike Wallen, who almost enveloped the area with his aura, Bion's aura was very directional. Bion's aura was very directional. When everyone looked at Bion, it was as if they were looking at a ruin. The children beside Chen Zhao all shut their mouths. They were also shocked by Bion's power. Kilo, come back, Chen Zhao called. Kilo had been strengthened by Chen Zhao, but it was very limited. He definitely couldn't fight an enemy of this level. The enemy before him was definitely in the Shangqing state. He wasn't much weaker than Zhang Tianyi. Just as Chen Zhao was about to stand up, Navat said, "Let me do it." You? Chen Zhao frowned at her. I don't have much time, Navat said. I don't have much time, Nawat Singh said. Once it was over, she would have no combat ability at all. Once the duration of the mirror image magic was over, she would have no combat strength to speak of. Chen Zhao thought for a moment, nodded, and sat back down. With each step, she also grew a bit larger. Similarly, with every step she took, her figure grew a little larger. Her skin glowed with a golden light. Her skin glowed with a golden light. Edith's face was filled with shock. At the moment, Navat's seemed to be a different person. That shocking pressure was actually on par with Byron's. Nawat Singh was also taking a gamble. At this moment, Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo rushed over. Their arrival didn't attract much attention. They were quietly observing the situation. Everyone's gaze was on Nawat Singh. Wallen narrowed his eyes at Navat's. She was so powerful. He'd lost to her last time. This woman was Okula's older sister. But where did she get such great power from? She could actually be on par with Bion, even if it was only temporary. It was still unbelievable. Who was Bion? He was the Northern Pillar King. Chapter 1821. Bion looked at Navats in surprise. He also didn't expect someone to be on par with him. Even if it was just in terms of aura, it was still unbelievable. Come, Bion said calmly. Navats didn't hold back. She had already tried her best. But the more she tried, the more she felt that the person before her was powerful and undefeatable. He had reached an inhuman level. Navats didn't have any extra flourishes. It was just a simple punch. It came crashing down with the pressure of Mount Tai. Admiration flashed in Bayan's eyes. He suddenly pushed his palms forward. A dazzling impact shot out from Bayan's palms. The impact instantly drowned Navot's. The impact shot toward the back of Navot's like a hot knife through butter, all the way to the mountain wall. The mountain wall was blasted apart, and tens of thousands of tons of rubble poured down in torrents. Everyone was shocked by this attack. Okula's heart tightened. In the next instant, Navot's sing broke through the light and stood above Bayan. She raised her hand and punched down. It smashed heavily onto Bayan's head. Bayan was sent flying, leaving a ditch on the ground. Navot stood where she was, panting heavily. Bayan stood up too. Half of his face was almost deformed. One could imagine how much damage that attack had done to him. However, Bayan's sunken cheeks were quickly filled with blood. After spitting out some blood, Bayan's face had basically returned to normal. Edith's face was completely pale. Even Navot's, who had been so powerful, wasn't Bayan's match. On the other hand, Byron was unscathed after suffering such a heavy blow. Bayan wasn't angry. Instead, he was even more shocked. He saw that Navot's aura was weakening. In fact, he'd already felt that while Navot's had a strong aura, her foundation was rather weak. However, the battle prowess that she displayed was refreshing. Still a little lacking. Bayan stood before Navot's and shook his head. He said regretfully, "What a pity. She's such a junior." "Yeah, it's still not enough." Chen Zhao finally stood up. Even if Navot's gave it his all, he was still a far cry from Bayan. Okula's face was filled with worry. After all, that was her older sister. Byron looked up and saw Chen Zhao walking toward him. Chen Zhao's aura was weak, so weak that it was almost undetectable. Byron narrowed his eyes at Chen Zhao, who had his hands in his pockets. Byron pointed at Navot's and looked at Chen Zhao. "Do you want to save her?" "No need. You can't kill anyone in front of me." Byron sneered. His palm that was pointing at Navot's was already shining brightly.
How about now?
Suddenly, Chen Zhao disappeared before Byron's eyes. Byron felt a chill down his spine and quickly turned around. Chen Zhao appeared behind him, waving his fist with one arm. His eyes were fierce. Shan, Zoran, and Erewhon attacked at the same time. Shan abruptly shot out a dozen or so string balls. The dozen or so balls of string spun and shot out colorful ropes. They wrapped around Chen Zhao's raised right arm. Chen Zhao's right arm shook forcefully. The dozen ropes representing different elements were instantly scattered. Byron didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced and grabbed Chen Zhao's right wrist, preventing him from moving. Chen Zhao finally took out his left arm from his pocket. But at this time, Zoran quickly cast a spell and shouted, "Dragon Lock." Then, the ground was pierced by chains. The chains shot toward Chen Zhao from the ground and wrapped around his left arm. His left and right arms were controlled at the same time. Erewhon put his palms together and hacked down from above. Radiant Emperor, slash. Intense light gathered in Erewhon's palms. From within the light, an extremely sharp and huge sword extended out. The sword was called Radiant Emperor. It hacked down at Chen Zhao. Clang. Chen Zhao tilted his head slightly, and the sword landed on his shoulder. Blood was seen, but the sword couldn't go any deeper. Everything had happened too quickly. Of course, it ended just as quickly. It started from when Chen Zhao appeared behind Byron without any warning. Then, when the four Pillar Kings attacked at the same time, controlling and counterattacking Chen Zhao. It only happened in an instant and ended in an instant. Edith's face was filled with shock. Maji Vickar and Geraldine Vickar were even more shocked, because they knew who the four people who attacked them were. Any one of them was a god of the Roma people. But now, all four of them had attacked at the same time. Who exactly was that person? Chen Zhao was controlled, but his expression was calm and indifferent. On the other hand, the four clearly had Chen Zhao under control, but their expressions were still serious. Kilo, come and help Nawat's back. Nawat's was right behind Chen Zhao. That was why Chen Zhao restrained his movements. Kilo hurriedly ran to Nawat's. He helped her back to the side. Xin Li, protect everyone, Chen Zhao said. Xin Li's face was filled with worry. After all, Chen Zhao didn't seem to be in a good situation. Are you sure they can protect themselves? Suddenly, Warren charged at the children. Boom! Just then, the four Pillar Kings, who should have controlled Chen Zhao firmly, suddenly felt an unparalleled power surge at them. The four Pillar Kings were sent flying. The next moment, Chen Zhao blocked Warren's path. Chen Zhao's hand suddenly grabbed the shoulder of Warren's golden armor and squeezed hard. Crack! The shoulder was crushed by Chen Zhao. As expected, I still think your armor is too ugly. Warren's expression darkened. He took a few steps back and pointed his arms at Chen Zhao. In an instant, 10 golden swords appeared behind Warren and shot towards Chen Zhao. Clang, clang, clang. The golden swords weren't damaged at all. Chen Zhao waved casually, and the 10 golden swords turned into scrap metal. The scene was silent. Everyone stared at Chen Zhao in disbelief. Especially Maji Vickar and Geraldine Vickar. They knew who the four people were. They also knew what kind of existence Warren was now. But Chen Zhao was fighting 1 against 5? Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Demingli were equally shocked. They also knew that those four were the legendary four Pillar Kings. Chen Zhao picked up a scrap sword from the ground. He looked left and right. Fuck, it's not gold. What a waste of my feelings. Chen Zhao was so angry that he squeezed the scrap sword into a ball. That ugly armor you're wearing is made of gold, right? And Edith's eyeballs almost popped out. This guy had been so unreliable the entire time. He didn't expect him to be so strong. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1822. The four Pillar Kings glanced at each other. This person was very strong. So strong that it made people's hair stand on end. I can't believe there's a monster like you in this era. Byron looked at Chen Zhao. It was hard to tell if his tone was gratified or regretful. Just then, everyone realized that Byron's body and face had become younger. But his aura had also become stronger until he was like a baby. His aura was more than 10 times stronger. Sean's hair also grew longer. Her hair was blood red to begin with. Now it was even burning. Zoran and Erewhon's auras also grew rapidly. They hadn't used their full strength before, but now they had to. Warren spread his arms, and hundreds of golden swords appeared behind him. Everyone had thought that Chen Zhao could really fight 1 against 5. But now, they realized that their thoughts had been too excessive. The four Pillar Kings and Warren had already fought to a terrifying degree. But at this moment, it was as if everyone's foundation had been increased tenfold. Could they really fight this battle? Gritting his teeth, Chen Zhao looked at the four Pillar Kings. Are you serious now? Why don't the four of you pretend to fight me? That way, everyone can report back. The four Pillar Kings stared at Chen Zhao with dark expressions. Who would pretend to fight with you? Forget it, forget it. Looks like you really want to fight. Clone, 10,000 spells were turned to 1. Dark assimilation, strength multiplication, giant spirit transformation. Right now, Chen Zhao had become a 5-meter-tall giant. Chen Zhao took out the black trident. Just like Chen Zhao, the black trident could change in size and length. Everyone was a little frightened, including the children behind Chen Zhao. Attack! Warren shouted. Hundreds of golden swords shot at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao pointed with his left hand. Thousands of stone swords appeared in the air. The scene was much more majestic than hundreds of golden swords. The four Pillar Kings attacked Chen Zhao at the same time. Chen Zhao held the black trident in his right hand and swept it out. Retreat. Sean felt her scalp go numb. She cried out and immediately flew back. Byron hesitated for a moment. When he wanted to retreat, it was already too late. He could only raise his magic to the maximum and yell, "Immortal!" Instantly, Byron's body became as resplendent as a diamond. However, when the trident swept across his body, the diamonds on his body began to crack like glass. The dazzling diamond disintegrated and sputtered outwards. Byron's diamond body was cut in half at the waist. Then, Chen Zhao stabbed at Byron's half-body. Byron's head exploded like a watermelon. Immediately afterward, all of Byron's fragments burst into a bright light that soared into the sky. The beam of light lasted for a few seconds before the diamond-like fragments were reduced to dull ashes. Dead? Byron is dead? Sean muttered to himself. He has returned to heaven and earth. This time, he is truly free. Erewhon's face was emotionless.
Who is this guy?
Zoran's gaze was unprecedentedly serious as he stared at Chen Zhao. Whether it was the remaining 3 Pillar Kings or Warren, or Maji Vicar, Geraldine Vicar, and Okula Singas, they all stared at him in disbelief. One strike. It was just one strike. Everything was over. An unbelievable opponent. However, the next moment, Chen Zhao said something that made everyone speechless. What a pity, Chen Zhao said regretfully. If I sold such a large diamond, I don't know how many millions I could get. Warren, Zoran, Erewhon, and Sean's gazes became unprecedentedly serious. Of course, Sean's gaze was still serious, and his smile was still like a blooming flower. Warren, I didn't think that you would encounter such a strong opponent right after you succeeded. I won't lose. Warren's expression was cold, and his gaze was serious. His tone was firm, but he gave off a feeling of lack of confidence. If His Majesty Quemelas faced him personally, the outcome might be 50-50, but I'm stronger than Quemelas, Warren said forcefully. Zoran glanced at Warren indifferently. You only obtained Quemelas's power, but not his realm. Also, how much of Quemelas's magic do you know? The opponent is at the same level as Quemelas. His realm matches his strength and battle experience are extremely rich. You, on the other hand, are just a nouveau riche who inherited a huge inheritance. Ha! Sean chuckled. But her laughter was so piercing to Warren's ears. Cut the crap. Quemelas wants you to listen to my orders. Even if you die, you have to fight to the end. As you wish. Sean smiled and shrugged. However, Chen Zhao suddenly attacked. The black trident appeared in front of Sean without any warning. Sorry for interrupting your conversation. Sean's expression froze, but in the blink of an eye, a relieved smile appeared on her face. Free. This time, she could finally be truly free. The black trident smashed Sean's beautiful head into pieces. The other spectators shivered in the cold wind. Chen Zhao did not care whether the opponent was male or female, beautiful or not. Hell's chains. Zoran roared. Countless chains broke out of the ground and swept toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao's huge body was instantly bound tightly by the hell's chains. But Chen Zhao was not trapped for long. Chen Zhao flipped his wrists and grabbed the chains on his arms. He pulled hard, and the ground seemed to have been plucked. The chains on Chen Zhao's body were like spider silk. The hell's chains were torn to pieces. Radiant Emperor, kill. Erewhon's attack was dozens of times more powerful than the previous one. It landed on Chen Zhao as if it was going to split the ground. But the result this time was even worse than last time. At least Chen Zhao could see blood last time. But this time, the huge sword fell apart the moment it landed. In the blink of an eye, Chen Zhao appeared before Erewhon and grabbed her head. He crushed it like a watermelon. Everyone received a huge visual impact. Zoran did not stop. Chen Zhao turned around and threw the black trident. Whoosh! Zoran was pierced by the black trident. The black trident had the power to kill gods. The immortal power inner core of Old Turtle embedded in it turned the black trident from a normal magic weapon into a weapon that could kill gods. Zoran looked down at the huge hole in his chest. He suddenly smiled and flipped forward. A pillar of light shot into the sky. It was like the last light of this worshipped god. The 4 Pillar Kings had all turned to dust. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1823. The black trident was stuck in the ground. Chen Zhao didn't take it back. He turned to look at Warren and grinned. You look really ugly, but it looks like you can take a beating. You think you can beat me? Warren was both shocked and angry. He looked at Chen Zhao with some fear in his eyes. But Warren clearly wasn't going to give up. Waylon's body suddenly enlarged. No, it wasn't just enlarging, it was the armor on his body that was enlarging. Bigger and bigger, 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters, he didn't stop until he was 200 meters tall. Right now, Warren was like a statue made of gold. However, this golden statue could move. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at the golden giant that blotted out the sky. Their astonishment couldn't be described with words. This was beyond their understanding. It was also beyond what they could do. Chen Zhao's body also glowed gold, but it wasn't obvious. Chen Zhao looked up at the 200-meter-tall golden giant. He murmured to himself, if only this was real gold. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao could only think about it in his head. This giant was probably 100,000 tons, right? Chen Zhao flew up and kicked the golden giant's left thigh. Crack! The golden giant's left thigh deformed from the kick. Everyone's mouths were wide open. Chen Zhao was indeed tall compared to normal people. But compared to a 200-meter-tall golden giant, he was still tiny and insignificant. But it was the difference between an ant and an elephant. The golden giant's thigh was broken by Chen Zhao's kick. The moment the golden giant lost its balance, it reached out to slap Chen Zhao in the air. But the next moment, Chen Zhao grabbed the golden giant's body and threw it over his shoulder. Rumble. Everyone's mouths were wide open. Barbara Rush gulped. She was provoking him just now, right? She must have been blessed by God. She actually didn't get killed. Nawat Singh lay on the ground weakly. But she was also watching the battle. To her, this was the most shocking. Now, she finally understood how big the difference between her and Chen Zhao was. Even though they had the same abilities, there was a fundamental difference between them. This gap couldn't be bridged at all. She had been wondering if she could borrow a fraction of Chen Zhao's power with mirror magic. Would she be able to do that? Only now did she understand. How much was that? 1%? Or 1 in 1,000? Xian Li clutched her chest. She tried her best to imagine how powerful Chen Zhao would be after adopting them. But she had never thought that Chen Zhao would display such a shocking side. As for Warren's men, Maji Vrykul and the others, they couldn't describe their astonishment. The 4 Pillar Kings were all dead. They were practically tortured to death by Chen Zhao. Although their battle was shocking, it was not soul-stirring. Warren, who'd inherited Quimiras's power, was also suppressed. Bang! A huge golden arm flew up. Roar! The golden giant let out a strange cry as Chen Zhao pressed it against the ground. Chen Zhao flew up and then dove down, landing heavily on the golden giant's chest. The golden giant couldn't get up in time and was once again blasted to the ground. The golden giant's chest had already caved in. Bang! Rumble! The golden giant finally lay motionless on the ground. Chen Zhao went up and twisted the golden giant's neck. Then he punched the golden giant's head. The golden giant's head was severely deformed. Chen Zhao punched a few more times, each with endless power. Finally, the metal shell was destroyed beyond recognition. Chen Zhao saw Warren, who was hiding inside. Warren stared at Chen Zhao in shock and anger. You damn bastard. I haven't lost yet. Chen Zhao went up and pried open the metal. Warren was completely exposed before Chen Zhao. Warren fought back again. Countless golden swords shot at Chen Zhao. At the same time, he turned to leave. But Chen Zhao dodged and blocked Warren's figure. With a dragon tail whip, Warren was smashed into the ground heavily. Maji, Geraldine, do it! Warren roared. Warren wanted Maji Vrykul and Geraldine Vrykul to attack. Of course, he wasn't targeting Chen Zhao. 100 of them wouldn't be enough for Chen Zhao. Warren wanted the 2 of them to attack the kids. This was to distract Chen Zhao. Maji Vrykul and Geraldine Vrykul glanced at each other. After a slight hesitation, they were about to attack the kids. But just then, a huge figure crawled out of the darkness. It was a completely black beast with wings on its back. There wasn't a single bit of skin on its body. It emitted a dangerous aura and protected the kids behind it. Maji Vrykul and Geraldine Vrykul were helpless. This black beast was most likely related to Chen Zhao. Chun Zhao smashed Warren before the kids with a punch. Warren jumped up and immediately wanted to harm the kids. Just then, Chun Zhao stepped over and pressed him to the ground. Chun Zhao tore off Warren's armor, but the armor was torn off along with his bones and flesh. But after Chun Zhao tossed the armor part away, it flew back and stuck to Warren's body. I hate these unkillable cockroaches. Chun Zhao waved his hand. The black trident that had been hundreds of meters away flew back into his hand. Chun Zhao stabbed the black trident into Warren's abdomen.
Wah! Ah!
Warren let out a tragic scream. The black trident pierced into his body, causing his powerful recovery ability to lose its effect. Even the holy armor couldn't protect him. This time, Chun Zhao easily took off Warren's helmet. He looked up at Xinli Sing. Xinli, do you want revenge? Xinli's chest heaved up and down. Just as she was hesitating, the youngest Sindora walked over to Warren with her short legs. Bam! She spat at Warren's face. I'm going to kill you, little bee. Chun Zhao stuffed a mouthful of dirt into Warren's mouth. Uncle, can I do anything? Kilo asked. Yes, anything. Chun Zhao nodded, but then he added, don't do dirty things in front of your brothers and sisters. Crow went up and gave Walloon a heavy punch. However, his attack did not do much damage to Warren. Even though Warren's magic, recovery, and the power of the holy artifact were all suppressed. But he was still powerful. Sindora, Mara, what are you two doing? Uncle, Mara said innocently. I'm competing with Sindora to see who can spit more. Chun Zhao rubbed his forehead. Binance, put on your pants. I order you, put on your pants. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1824. Chun Zhao was frustrated. When we take revenge, we have to take revenge. We have to take revenge properly. Revenge is such a sacred thing. Don't do something that hurts the enemy by 1,000, but hurts yourself by 800, okay? When you grow up and realize what you did, you'll probably be traumatized for the rest of your life. Xian Li, you really don't want some? Chun Zhao looked at Xinli Sing. Xian Li hesitated for a long time, but in the end, she shook her head.
No.
You really don't want it? It's best to vent. It doesn't matter what violent methods you use. Anyway, our family doesn't tolerate it. Xian Li shook her head. No need. I think you'll give him the punishment he deserves. Uncle, I want to take a photo with you. Didi tugged at Chun Zhao's calf. With Chun Zhao's current height, the 12-year-old Didi only reached his calf. Chun Zhao reached out and had Didi stand on his hand. Then he held Didi. Chun, should we finish this earlier? I really need an ambulance now. Not Sing endured the pain all over her body. Her body was already overloaded from the attack she'd used. If Chun Zhao and the kids kept delaying, she'd have to go to the morgue. Fine. Chun Zhao lifted the black trident. Warren was still strung on the tip. I'll go talk to him about life. Chun Zhao carried Warren and disappeared before everyone. A while later, a pillar of light shot into the sky. After a while, Chun Zhao returned. There were still bloodstains on the black trident. Xian Li glanced at Chun Zhao, but didn't say anything. Chun Zhao removed the spell on him. Kilo, carry knots. Uncle, why me? Kilo lowered his head, not daring to look at Chun Zhao. Because you're strong. Otherwise, who would carry you? Your sister or brother? Chun Zhao said matter-of-factly. Let me do it, Edith said. I'm only good for this. Knots rolled her eyes at Chun Zhao. She pointed at Maji and the others. What about them?
How?
Kill them all? It's up to you. Navats glanced at Okula Singh. Forget it, their master is dead anyway. Chun Zhao glanced at Maji and the others. Everyone's expression was unnatural. Among all of them, only Geraldine Vickers didn't have much fear. Or you want me to kill them? Forget it then. They won't be a threat anyway. She glanced at her sister from the corner of her eyes, but her heart was full of complicated emotions. What a pity. I hope he didn't get the password. Everyone was speechless. No wonder when he had killed the 4 Pillar Kings, he had been so ruthless. yet he had not shown any signs of holding back. Killing Warren and avoiding everyone else? Li, the lives of everyone on the bus are in your hands. Uncle, I haven't gotten my license yet. I can only take it next year. Li didn't know what to do. It's okay. You can practice on all of us. It'll be easier for you to get your driver's license. Chin, I feel like all the bones in my body are broken. Can you send me to the hospital safely? Don't worry, I believe in Li. You know she can drive. She steals the steering wheel in the garage every night. I think Li has the heart of a racer. Li was too ashamed to show her face. She did like sports cars. But she also knew that she couldn't drive without a license. Plus, she had just arrived, so she had to keep a low profile. So, she would secretly touch the steering wheel every day. In the end, Chen Zhao, the unscrupulous parent, exposed her. If you can send Nawatz to the hospital and send us back to the hotel safely, I'll buy you a car for your 16th birthday. Li's face was filled with surprise and anticipation. The citywide blackout had already been completely restored. Chen Zhao looked at the night view, entering a rare moment of peace. Before Chen Zhao killed Walloon, he'd sensed something in his body. After Quemela's came out of Warren's body. Only then did Chen Zhao understand that it was a connection between the same kind. Quemela's was a man of God in that era. Quemela's had lived for 300 years. Of course, if there were no accidents, he could have lived even longer. They had a short conversation. In any era, someone like Quemela's would be considered a madman. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't think of a madman as someone who killed and burned everywhere, or had the ambition to rule the world. It was a kind of idealistic madness. Of course, Quemela's would kill too. If someone stopped his intentions or thoughts, he would probably kill too. However, in that era, he was an absolute king, and an absolute powerhouse. Because of this, he felt lonely. Chen Zhao was pretty much invincible now, but he didn't feel lonely. Perhaps it was because there were too few entertainment programs in that era. If he could watch Victoria's Secret every night, he probably wouldn't be lonely. Of course, Quemela's idealistic and goal were very pure. He wanted to create a perfect world, but not the real world. A perfect world of death. In the East, the underworld was the example. In the West, it was hell. Both were essentially the same. They were both worlds that the dead went to and lived in. But there were some differences between the two. Gods in the underworld were in charge of management. They were more like employees in a large company. On the other hand, hell was a kingdom ruled by demons. Those demon kings treated the souls from the human world as their private property. In Quemela's guess, hell and the underworld were more like a complete world. However, regardless of whether it was hell or the netherworld, they were both much, much larger than the human world. So, in Quemela's guess, the human world was incomplete. Hell and the underworld were more like mismatched parts. They were only there to ensure the operation of the human world. Quemela's wanted to use this to complete the incomplete parts of the human world. He wanted to create a world of the dead outside of hell or the underworld. Quemela's used his ability to open up an alternate dimension. Of course, Chen Zhao's alternate dimension was completely different. Quemela's was larger and more complete. For this, he spent more than 100 years constantly making up for the inadequacies of this alternate dimension. In this aspect, Chen Zhao was far inferior to Quemela's. Of course, Chen Zhao's ambition wasn't here either. Chen Zhao and Quemela's conversation was more about complementing each other's inadequacies. Chen Zhao was better at fighting. Quemela's fighting was actually his weakness. But his weakness was only relative to Chen Zhao. After all, he was a god. How weak could he be? 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1825. Quemela's legacy wasn't his power. It was the heaven for the dead that he'd spent 150 years creating. Quemela's was too tired. He didn't want to maintain it anymore. He couldn't maintain it anymore. He hoped that Chen Zhao could take over the heaven. But Chen Zhao refused. Only a lunatic would accept it. Quimeras was a lunatic. He'd created trouble for himself. Then he'd merged with the heaven he'd created. Now he was free. But he wanted Chen Zhao to take it over. He wouldn't do such a thankless thing even if he was beaten to death. When he returned to the hotel, the sky was already bright. Everyone looked a little tired. As soon as he went upstairs, he saw Portia walk out of her room with a haggard expression. She hadn't slept since Chen Zhao woke her up last night. After settling little Larissa down, little Jerlin woke up again. Then she wanted to find her father. Where could Portia find one for her? After much persuasion, Chen Zhao finally calmed Jerlin down. In the end, the electricity went out just like that. Then the temperature in the room started rising. Jerlin started crying again. Little Larissa woke up too. Anyway, she'd been tormented for the whole night. Portia ran to the front desk angrily. But the front desk couldn't give her electricity. "Boss, I'm telling you now, I want." Chen Zhao patted Portia's shoulder. "You're not awake right now. Go rest for half a day. Tell me what you want when you're awake." Stunned, Portia returned to her room embarrassedly. Her resentment only lasted for a moment. After venting, she sobered up. What a joke. No matter what, the money she owed was a topic that couldn't be avoided. Forget it. She'd just be a laborer for Chen Zhao. "Oh, book a return ticket for today. We're going back to L.A. today." "Today? Go back? But, boss, didn't you say I'd rest for half a day?" "That's right. On the plane, the flight is exactly 6 hours." Portia really wanted to buy a gun and shoot Chen Zhao. But then she remembered that Chen Zhao had faced more than a dozen gunmen before. He'd broken all their limbs. Portia stopped imagining things in her mind. Unless she could get a cannon and tie Chen Zhao in a mouth on the plane. Where's Miss Knotts? Hospital. What happened to her? Tricosance muscle disorder. What illness is this? Diarrhea. Portia immediately reacted to the situation. Chen Zhao always spouted nonsense in front of her. Moreover, he had never been afraid of cold or raw. All kinds of jokes were made. After the plane took off, Portia could finally sleep peacefully. The seats in the first-class cabin were spacious and could be adjusted back and forth, so it was quite comfortable. However, just as Portia fell asleep, she was woken up by someone. "Portia, can I switch places with you?" Xian Li asked. Portia felt like she was about to go crazy from being tormented by this family. But he couldn't lose his temper at the little girl. He could only change seats with Xian Li. Xian Li. "Uncle, I want to join this supernatural organization. We'll talk about it when you're of age," Chen Zhao said indifferently. "But Risa is only 14 years old, and your Moore is only 17 this year. Neither of them is of age." When Xian Li and Lisa met for the first time, there was a little conflict. However, the two girls were about the same age, so they soon talked about everything. Xian Li had heard that there was a tower of trials in the supernatural organization. Only people in the organization had the right to use it. To become stronger, one had to challenge the Tower of Trials again and again. To join the supernatural organization, one had to agree with Chen Zhao. Risa was once a captive. "Moore is older than me in the organization," Chen Zhao said indifferently. "The supernatural organization doesn't accept people anymore unless you have some value. Your main cultivation system is curses. Even if you were 10 times stronger, you still wouldn't be able to join the organization, let alone the current you. I can start as an outer member. If you can get into a famous university, I'll consider agreeing to your request. But studying isn't my strong suit." "Then try to make it your strong suit." Chen Zhao's attitude was businesslike. Xian Li stared at Chen Zhao annoyed. She wanted to become stronger. She didn't want to be as weak and powerless as before. The power that she'd once been proud of was so powerless in the face of any change. "I don't want to go to university. You should know that my interest isn't in studying. I won't force any child to take the same exam. Even if you don't want to go to university, that's fine. I'm just stating my request. Accept or reject, I won't ask," Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. "Of course, you still have to go to school. After all, I don't want to be sued by the Underage Protection Association." Chen Zhao wasn't someone who only cared about grades. But he believed in one saying, Going to university could broaden one's horizons, not to mention those who dropped out of school and succeeded. In fact, those who went to university had a higher chance of success. Chun Zhao didn't care how good his children were or how smart they were. But at least in a situation where it was within his power, Chun Zhao didn't want their impulsiveness to affect their future. Chun Zhao also didn't care if she was a successful businesswoman or a witch in the supernatural world. But the supernatural organization's circle was too small. If Chun Zhao asked Xinli Sing to join them now, then her future vision would most likely be limited to the supernatural organization. Even if Xin Li said she wanted to travel around the world, Chun Zhao wouldn't object. One's horizons determined one's height. Even a super genius wouldn't be able to achieve anything if he was locked in a small village. He wouldn't be able to achieve anything because his horizons were only limited to the village. How about this? If you can stay in high school for 3 years, I'll give you a mana potion. If you get into a university, I'll get a list to find the curse magic book you need. If you get into a famous university, I'll allow you to join the supernatural organization. What do you think of this deal? But my grades are terrible. I can hire a teacher to tutor you.
Oh, right.
I'll arrange for you to go to school next semester. You still have a lot of free time now. I can hire a tutor for you. Tutor? Xin Li shuddered. I don't want a tutor, ever. Portia should be able to do this job. Chun Zhao murmured. Portia, who didn't know what was going on, shivered. Why do I suddenly feel cold? Is there something wrong with the cabin's temperature? Chapter 1826. On the way home, Portia, I've thought about it. I'm going to give you a raise. Portia, who was driving, jumped in fright for no reason. She almost drove Chun Zhao's new car into a ditch. Chun Zhao would never love someone for no reason. Nor would he give her warmth for no reason. Most of the time, Chun Zhao would throw out a piece of meat first. Then there would be a huge hole under the meat. It had always been like this. Boss, I'm very satisfied with my current salary. Portia's expression was stiff. She was considering if she should just drive the car to the beach and die with Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao looked at Portia, who immediately averted his gaze. Boss, I'm driving.
Don't disturb me.
I plan to cancel your current debt in half a year. Since you don't want it, forget it. Chun Zhao turned and moved to the back. Portia was stunned. Boss, let's continue our conversation. However, Chun Zhao put on airs this time. He didn't say anything to Portia until the car entered the garage of Mingyue Villa. Boss, you said you'll cancel my debt in half a year. You have to keep your word. You might not be willing to do the work I give you. Who said that? I'm happy to do it. Xinli will start school in February next year. Her grades are a mess right now. I need you to tutor her, so she can at least reach the level of her peers. It was indeed a trap. Portia accepted the task with tears in her eyes. After returning to Mingyue Villa, some children were full of energy, while others were exhausted. Chun Zhao and Portia packed their luggage. A while later, Fei Lai came back too. Portia immediately felt like she was unnecessary. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai cuddled together as if there was no one else around. Fei Lai, did you ask for leave today? It was only 1 in the afternoon. Fei Lai was actually back.
No.
L.A. issued a tide warning today. There'll be huge waves in the next few days, so Angel Beach is temporarily closed. How was your trip? Fei Lai asked. Not bad. It's just that Knots went to the hospital again. Beside her, Portia rolled her eyes. Play? Chun Zhao went to Minneapolis and stayed there for 1 night. Then he took a plane back in the morning. You call this play? But to Chun Zhao, it was indeed play. Because they ran out at night. No one knew what they were going to do. If they were going to do business, then why would they bring a group of children? Is it settled? Yes, it's done. Chun Zhao nodded. Call the people from the association. Let's have a party tonight. Yes. Chun Zhao nodded. The two of them were not averse to having a party with people from the association, as long as it was still a matter of atmosphere. Everyone's level was different, so the topic of conversation was different. It was just like Stephen and David. One was a world-class director, and the other was a police officer. They were both good friends, but if they were together, David would become Steven's fan instead of his friend. This difference in status made it difficult for them to be friends who could talk about everything. This was also why Chen Zhao only wanted to invite one group of people. Today, he would gather with them. Tomorrow, he would drink with them. Portia heard their conversation. He thought to himself that he had to keep an eye on the kitchen later. Let's see who's cooking dinner. Portia now had a grudge against the chefs of the Bright Moon Villa. They could finish breakfast, lunch, and dinner without a sound. He appeared without a sound and disappeared without a sound. He was always so mysterious, which made Portia's curiosity rise to the extreme. Today, he had to unveil this mystery. Chen Zhao called West. Hey, West, bring people to my house tonight. I'm having a party. Okay. West didn't waste any time. In the evening, a large group of people arrived at the Bright Moon Villa. Portia noticed that the kitchen in the Bright Moon Villa was completely silent. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai weren't in a hurry either. The guests were already here. Why wasn't anyone working? What were they going to eat tonight? Everyone's here, right? Chen Zhao said. Let's go to the yacht tonight. Portia was stunned. She ran to the edge of the yard and looked down. She realized that a sumptuous meal had been prepared on the Hydra. Portia was crazy. That chef or those chefs, were they playing hide and seek with her? Portia was speechless. The children and people from the association also ran to the beach to play. Chen Zhao and West stood in the yard. President, we've chosen 2 new missions. What missions? Where are they? Enter the Russian super drill hole. Is it the deepest hole ever drilled in human history? Yes, that drill hole. The red mission was specially approved by the Russian government. Does that mean the legend is true? They really drilled into the gates of hell? Not the gates of hell, West said. They drilled into the habitat of an underground creature. The mission requirement is to kill the mother of the creature. Do you need me to go with you? Let's stick to the old rules, West said. But it's almost 10,000 meters underground. If you run into trouble, you won't even have a chance to ask for help. Chen Zhao was still worried. Danger could appear at any time in the underground world. President, it's not that serious, West said. Actually, it's a popular place for spiritualists. They often walk around the super drill hole. What about the other red mission? African cave dragon. No, you're not strong enough to deal with an adult dragon. Chen Zhao shook his head. It's too risky. No, not to kill it, but to protect it. What? What's going on? Wasn't the previous mission to kill the dragon? How did it become to protect it? No one would have thought that the barbarian's cave poisonous dragon wasn't the scourge that was entrenched there. On the contrary, he was the guardian of balance on that prairie. Because of the Scarlet Red mission, a large number of spiritualists went there and attacked him, causing him to be seriously injured. Now, some unclean creatures are targeting the poisonous dragon, wanting to devour him. What'll happen if Dulong dies? If Poison Dragon died, then the grass plain would lose its natural balance and become a desert, a forbidden zone for life. Therefore, for the sake of the grass plain and to protect Poison Dragon, the Scarlet Church changed their mission from killing Poison Dragon to protecting Poison Dragon after understanding the whole story. Chapter 1827. The Hydra was moving slowly on the sea. The yacht was on autopilot. Hi, I'm Kalon. Kalon walked over to Xian Li. Lisa and Moer also followed them. Hi, I'm Xian Li. Lisa moved closer to Xian Li and asked, did the president agree? Xian Li shook her head. My uncle said that he'll only let me join the supernatural organization after I finish school. These adults are all like that. They don't care about our personal will. Kalon drank, depressed. Xian Li looked at Kalon. You're not a member of the supernatural organization either? Kalon's father is an elite. He's the oldest member, Moore said. But there's a rule that if a member's family wants to join, both the member and the president must agree. You're lucky, Kalon said. You only need Mr. Chen to agree. Then can we join another organization? Xian Li asked. Everyone looked at Xian Li and couldn't help but roll their eyes.
Sure, Lisa said.
But the president will destroy that organization later. In all of North America, no. In all of America, no organization can go against the president's will. Xian Li thought of the battle last night. He'd faced the 5 legendary Romani Pillar Kings. In the end, he'd completed a one-sided massacre. Xian Li also had a new understanding of the power of the spiritual world. In the past, she'd only thought that her father was powerful. At that time, she'd thought that there was no one more powerful than her father. She'd seen her father as her idol. However, during Warren's invasion, his father finally fell in front of her. The president is a very controlling person. If you're not related to him, he won't interfere. But if you're related to him, you have to listen to his orders, Moore said. Plus, in the L.A. area, apart from the supernatural organization, there's only the psionic team. That organization is the supernatural organization's enemy. I'm sure the president will be happy to get rid of them. There are other hostile organizations in L.A. Can Uncle deal with them directly? That's not something that can be decided by force. It's very complicated. But if the president finds an excuse, he'll get rid of the psionic team without hesitation. But my academic performance is very poor. Xian Li said with a sad face. If I follow Uncle's request, I won't be able to join the supernatural organization. There's a way. Go to Ruan Faxaban. Moer suddenly had an idea and said, Him? Is he from the supernatural organization? Yes, he's our alchemist. Maybe he knows how to make some potions to increase intelligence. Which one is he? That's the guy with messy hair. Moore pointed at Ruan Faxben, who was eating and drinking on a plywood not far away. Ruan Faxi was definitely the most aloof member in the association. It was mainly because of his habit of only coming out of the laboratory once every few days. Therefore, most of the time, his body carried a foul stench. It wasn't just because of the smell of his own sweat, but also because his body always carried the smell of some experimental materials. Luong, come here for a moment. Ruan Faxi looked up at Moore and the others, wiping the grease on his face on his clothes. What for? Hello, Mr. Luong, I am Xian Li. I know you. You're the president's adopted daughter, right? Luong, Xian Li wants a potion that can increase her intelligence. I wonder if you can get it? Magic potions can increase magic power directly, Ruan Faxi said. Other than magic potions that can directly increase magic power, other types of potions have the effect of fair trade. In other words, they convert your other strengths into the abilities you need. For example, the wisdom potion can increase intelligence, but weaken magic power. Xian Li, do you want it? Huh. Everyone looked at each other. They didn't expect the intelligence potion to have such a restriction. Then why isn't the magic potion limited? Of course. What materials do magic potions need? The most important is the skeleton of a powerful magic creature. Therefore, magic potions aren't regular magic potions. They're more like supplements. Is there no other way? Xian Li obviously wouldn't sacrifice her magic power to increase intelligence. There is, Ruan Faxi said. The golden apple, the fruit of wisdom. You mean the golden apple in Greek mythology? Yes, it's the golden apple in Greek mythology. Ruan Faxi looked at Xian Li. If you can find the legendary golden apple, you'll gain wisdom. In Greek mythology, the golden apple was a gift from a tree that Gaia, the mother of the earth, brought back from the west coast as a wedding gift for Zeus and Hera. Zeus planted it in the sacred garden, and it was guarded by his 3 daughters, Igel, Arusha, Hesperides, and the 100-headed dragon. In Greek mythology, the golden apple appeared twice. The first time was when Hercules completed the 11th of the 12 great feats, which was to obtain the golden apple under the watch of the 3 goddesses and the 100-headed dragon. The second time was during the wedding of the human hero Piraeus and the ocean goddess Thetis. Eris, the goddess of conflict and discord, didn't receive the wedding invitation. Thus, she purposely gave a golden apple to the guests and claimed that it was for the most beautiful and powerful goddess. Queen Hera, Goddess of wisdom Athena and goddess of love and beauty Aphrodite didn't give in to each other. They all believed that they were the ones who deserved the golden apple. This golden apple eventually led to a war. Troy was destroyed by the Spartans. Can the golden apple gain wisdom? Moore asked. In Greek mythology, it doesn't say that eating the golden apple will give you wisdom. The golden apple can give you the ability you want, Ruan Faxi said. It's not limited to wisdom. It can also be your magic or other abilities. It's called the omnipotent fruit. But legends are just legends. It doesn't mean that the golden apple really exists. The Scarlet Mission includes finding the golden apple, Ruan Faxi said. Since the Scarlet Church believes that the golden apple exists, it's very likely that it does. Are there any clues? In the British Museum, there's an ancient book called the Book of Prometheus. It's said that this book records everything from the beginning to the end of Greek mythology. Chapter 1828. Stealing the Book of Prometheus from the British Museum should be more difficult than studying, right? Chun Zhao said coolly as he walked over. Chun Zhao glanced at Lisa. She was a genius girl. Plus, he and Lisa had stolen from the museum before. So, Chun Zhao knew how difficult it was to steal from a museum. Chun Zhao heard the kids' secret discussion. Xian Li saw Chun Zhao walk over. Clearly, he'd heard their conversation. If Chun Zhao knew, it would be difficult for her to complete the task. Lisa immediately looked away, afraid that Chun Zhao would notice something. Chun Zhao glanced at Lisa, and then at Ruan Faxben. Moore was a hothead. He was also here, but he was definitely a pawn. Mo Air was a rash young man. Although he was also here, he was definitely being used as a chess piece by someone else. They were definitely acting. They probably wanted to trick Xian Li into finding the golden apple. They were definitely putting on an act. They were probably trying to trick Xian Li into finding the golden apple. They were definitely acting. They probably wanted to trick Xian Li into finding the golden apple. Tricking Xian Li was different from facing Chun Zhao. Huh? I was joking. Ruan Faxben laughed loudly. Xian Li, don't take it to heart. Xian Li clearly thought that it was because of Chun Zhao. Only Ruan would say something sarcastic. Uncle, give me half a year. In half a year I have to find the golden apple. If I can't find it, I'll go back to school. Xian Li looked at Chun Zhao seriously. After a moment of silence, Chun Zhao said, I can give you half a year, but you also have to agree to 3 of my requests. What requests? First, you have to make a phone call every day. Second, you have to carry a tracking device. Third, you can't kill anyone, Chun Zhao said. If you agree to these 3 requests, I'll give you half a year. If you refuse, you'll have to stay at home obediently. Okay, I agree. Lisa, Ruan Faxben Moore, since you 3 are so active in persuading Xian Li, follow her. Don't even think about escaping. Lisa's and Ruan's cheeks twitched. This wasn't in their plan. In fact, their goal was to influence Chun Zhao through Xian Li. They wanted Chun Zhao to be part of their plan. In the end, Chun Zhao did intervene, but not in the way they had planned. The two met Chun Zhao's eyes. There was a threatening look in Chun Zhao's eyes. The two of them could only put on a long face and admit defeat. Kellen immediately shouted, Mr. Chin, what about me? What about me? Fuck off. Go find an elite. I have no objections if he agrees. If he has objections, then I can't do anything about it. Mr. Chen, let me go too.
Help me talk to my dad.
He'll definitely listen to you.
Fuck off.
Chun Zhao didn't want to get involved in Colin's family matters. After all, Colin not only had an elite behind him, but also his mother, Amy. Moreover, there was a certain amount of risk involved in this matter. Chun Zhao couldn't influence an elite. Not even the slightest bit affected. As the saying goes, better safe than sorry. If Colin was hurt because of this, Chun Zhao would have to bear the responsibility. He didn't want to face his parents' questions. Of course, if Xian Li really wanted to go, Chun Zhao would do his best to ensure her safety. Apart from her personal weapons, Chun Zhao would also contact Mary, the 23rd generation. Mary had wanted to build a good relationship with Qinzhao for a long time. It was just that in their first few interactions, Qinzhao didn't have a good relationship with her. So, Qinzhao believed that the 23rd Blood Mary would be happy to accept this task. Roar! Just then a cheer came from the stern. Klaus and Elite were standing there. They were both wearing swimming trunks and in a diving position. We agreed that no magic is allowed, Klaus said in a low voice. I don't need magic to deal with you. Portia stood in front of the 3-story fence and watched the commotion below. These people were really energetic. Moreover, they actually dared to swim in the sea under the night sky. Uncle Elite, Uncle Klaus, I want to compete with you too. Jerlin ran to the two in her swimsuit and stood at the stern. Portia was speechless. She looked left and right, trying to find Qinzhao. She wanted Qinzhao to control Jerlin. Wasn't that too much? It was one thing for the two adults to go into the sea at night. Jerlin wanted to join in the fun too. This wasn't Bright Moon Beach. It was the sea with strong winds and waves. Klaus and Angelite's faces darkened too. Compete with Jerlin? It would be embarrassing if they won, and even more embarrassing if they lost. Of course, they couldn't lose. Unless Qinzhao helped them cheat. But Qinzhao was definitely too lazy to interfere. Then, the two of them would cooperate with each other. Klaus and Elite, Qinzhao said, walking to the stern. Play how you want. Don't take care of Jerlin. Jerlin was a bit lonely at home. In fact, she could swim more than she could at home. Apart from a few children and King Kong, who was afraid of water, the others could swim and weren't slower than Jerlin. But they all gave in to Jerlin. Qinzhao didn't think that this was good for Jerlin. Dad, I won't lose. Don't cry if you lose. Just wait and see. Qinzhao rolled his eyes. If you lose, you'll have to clear the plates later. I won't lose. I definitely won't lose. Okay, get ready. Little Jerlin, get ready. Don't talk anymore, Failai ordered. 3, 2, 1, start. Jerlin's reaction wasn't slow. She grasped the timing very well. Klaus and Elite listened to Qinzhao's words. But it was impossible for them to not go easy on her. At least, the two of them were slower than Jerlin when they jumped into the water. It was obvious. One was a seasoned veteran, while the other was an enhanced spiritualist who specialized in speed. How could they be slower than Jerlin? But if they really started swimming, they'd quickly catch up to Jerlin. This was the difference in their nature. Jerlin's physique was good, but that was only relative to children her age. It wasn't that she could be compared to adults now. Of course, in terms of swimming ability, Jerlin was indeed not worse than a regular person. Just then, a wave several meters high rose in front of Jerlin, Klaus, and Elite. Apart from Portia, everyone knew that it was Qinzhao. Don't hurt Jerlin, Failai whispered. No, I know what I'm doing. With a splash, Jerlin was slapped into the sea. Klaus and Elite hesitated for a moment, wondering if they should dive down to save Jerlin. But Qinzhao waved his hand at the stern. Jerlin was always under his control. He even knew her condition like the back of his hand. Chapter 18:29. 10 seconds later, little Jerlin suddenly came out of the water. But he couldn't figure out the direction for a long time. He looked left and right on the surface of the sea, and finally saw the Hydra not far away. But Klaus and Elite were nowhere to be seen. Little Jerlin felt her nose sting. She secretly wiped her tears. Then she swam toward the Hydra. But Jerlin couldn't catch up to the Hydra yet. Suddenly, Jerlin's feet seemed to touch something in the water. Then the thing lifted Jerlin up so that she could stand on the surface of the sea. Amon? Ah! It's Amon! Jerlin cried in surprise. She hadn't seen Amon in a long time, although she couldn't see Amon's full appearance. Just from the touch, she could tell that it was Amon. The 5 tiger generals and the dolphin family all felt different. Only when standing on Amon's back could she feel as solid as standing on land. Portia saw Jerlin standing on the surface of the sea. There seemed to be a huge shadow moving under the water. Portia couldn't help but feel nervous. She kept staring at the shadow under Jerlin's feet. The shadow moved all the way to the stern of the Hydra and suddenly sank into the water. Chen Zhao pulled Jerlin onto the boat. Dad, Amon's back. Amon sent me back just now. Amon? Portia's face was filled with confusion. Who was Amon? Is that the thing in the water? It felt bigger than a shark. Was it a whale? Portia was no longer surprised by Chen Zhao's whale rearing. He could even raise sharks, let alone whales. Whales were recognized as more intelligent than sharks. They were the most intelligent species in the ocean. An important factor to judge a creature's intelligence was whether it had rationality other than killing when facing creatures weaker than itself. For example, killer whales would treat prey as toys. This was an expression of rationality. It wouldn't just treat other creatures as food. Perhaps for killer whales, simple survival was too boring. Killer whales were so powerful that they didn't need to think about food anymore. Even the largest creatures in the ocean were on their list of food. So now they needed to think about how to improve their quality of life. Entertainment was actually a way to improve one's quality of life. After humans were no longer affected by food and the environment, they began to develop further in society. Of course, at the same time, with enough food and a stable environment, human intelligence also began to increase by leaps and bounds. From the perspective of biological evolution, this kind of evolution was natural. The orca's current intelligence and their dominance in the ocean were already close to the primitive social form of humans. However, the killer whale could no longer grow. This was because the development of mankind had caused them to lose the space to grow. If humans were still in a feudal society, perhaps the killer whales would have a chance. However, ever since mankind had entered the stage of technological explosion, their martial prowess had increased by tens of thousands of times. Even if the killer whales had the same intelligence as humans, they couldn't reverse this relationship. Just like the movie Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it was impossible to happen in reality. Could one or a few chimpanzees with the same intelligence as humans really overthrow the rule of humans? How was this possible? Even within the same species, humans would kill each other due to skin color, let alone another species. Of course, a movie was still a movie. It was just an artistic process and an exaggeration of the plot. That would never happen in real life. Even if the leaders of the human army were a group of monkeys, they wouldn't lose. Actually, Amon wasn't the only one back. Little Nine was back too. Today was the monthly payday. Chen Zhao threw 2 demonic crystals into the water. The Hydra stopped. Portia looked at the vast night sky. Weren't they worried about Klaus and Elite, who'd been swimming for an hour? Portia knew the two and had been worried for them for a long time. In the end, the two swam back after an hour and a half. Without using magic, Elite might not be Klaus' match. Of course, even so, he wasn't weaker than Klaus. The difference wasn't obvious. Little Jerlin ran up to them and threatened, "Uncle Klaus, Uncle Elite, I'll definitely defeat you in the future." Then, Jerlin suffered from Chen Zhao's revenge. She pinched her face and flicked her nose. Little Jerlin escaped pathetically. Amon found a sunken ship at the bottom of the sea. It seems to be transporting gold. It's more than 30 nautical miles from here. What do you think? Are you interested in going? Everyone looked at Chen Zhao with shining eyes. Even Portia was a bit dazed. Sunken ship? Transporting gold? Roar. I'm going. I'm going to get rich. Lisa yelled. Treasure hunt, treasure hunt. I'm going to salvage the sunken ship. Eric was even more excited. After all, he just learned a sea creature form and was worried about where to use it. He didn't expect to have a chance to use it now. The others were also very excited. Who wouldn't love gold? Feilai walked up to Chen Zhao. Darling, is there a lot of gold in that sunken ship? Probably more than $10 million in gold and a lot of silver coins. The Hydra sailed toward the sunken ship. After 2 hours, the kids all went to sleep. However, the party on the ship continued. Portia couldn't help but wonder if a few of them would drown when they got into the water, considering how much they drank. We're here. This is the place. If you want to get rich, go into the water. One by one, they were ready. Except for a few, the rest were wearing diving suits. Not everyone could leave the air. Portia didn't want to miss this opportunity, so she also wore a diving suit. However, the sunken ship was more than 100 meters deep. Portia couldn't go any further after diving 20 meters. She could only float to the surface, depressed. Then, she looked at Chen Zhao's subordinates. They were all diving down crazily. There were even one or two who didn't even wear diving suits. They were a bunch of lunatics. Portia floated to the surface. Fei Lai pulled her up. "Portia, come up," Fei Lai said, smiling. "You can't beat them." Portia also realized this. Even if she wore a diving suit, she couldn't beat them. She really didn't know how they did it. Chen Zhao sat on the railing with his feet dangling outside, enjoying the sea breeze. "Boss, aren't you going down to get some? You can dive down too, right?" "If I needed it, I wouldn't have told them the sunken ship's location. I'd run over myself and fish up all the gold and silver coins." Chapter 1830. Just then, a beam of light appeared on the surface of the sea. It was the light of a searchlight. A ship seemed to be approaching the Hydra. It was a fishing boat, but it was rather large. Its length and displacement were similar to the Hydra, but its tonnage was probably higher. The fishing boat stopped when it was about 100 meters away from a Hydra. The searchlight on the fishing boat shone on the Hydra. Just then, Chen Zhao heard the butler system's voice. "Master, Meryl requests to speak to you." "Meryl? That fishing boat over there?" Chen Zhao thought for a moment and picked up. "Hello, how can I help you?" "Hello, I'm Meryl's captain, Judge Bunchen. The captain's voice came from the communicator. "Our fishing boat is going to do salvage nearby. Can you please leave this area so that Meryl's fishing net doesn't hit your boat's propeller?" "It's not an open fishing ground," Chen Zhao replied. "Captain Bunchen, it's illegal for you to fish here, so I suggest you leave as soon as possible." On Meryl, Judge Bunchen frowned. The people on the other boat really didn't know what was good for them. He'd already lowered his voice, but the other side still didn't know when to stop. "Boss, we still have to use force," a rough man said. "It's just a boat. What's there to hesitate about? Let's just sink it. We might even get some money." "Take out all the tools and make it clean," Judge Bunchen said expressionlessly. On the Hydra, Portia was shocked to see the fishing boat crash over. The yacht was made of thin steel and aluminum, different from the pure steel of the fishing boat. If it crashed over, the Hydra would definitely be cut in half. After all, it was a yacht. The hull was designed for comfort. Most of the modern fishing boats were designed to withstand the strongest winds and waves. Some boats even had the ability to break ice. As long as they were equipped with an icebreaker, they could crash into the floating ice on the surface. "Get out of the way! Get out of the way!" Portia screamed in fear. Glancing at Chen Zhao, she said, "The kids are sleeping." Chen Zhao nodded and turned to look at Meryl. Meryl had been under Chen Zhao's domain the entire time. Within a radius of 1,000 meters and on the sea. The Meryl wanted to ram the yacht, but it was obviously thinking too much. Furthermore, there were still Amon and Little Nine in the water. Portia discovered that although the Meryl had been rushing in their direction, it hadn't gotten any closer. Looking at its posture, it was clearly charging over, and the seawater was being pushed away. How could it not be close? Portia wasn't the only one who was confused. The people on Meryl were also confused. Judging from the traces of the current, their ship is indeed moving forward, but why didn't they approach the Hydra? At that moment, Gaia floated up from the sea and jumped onto the yacht. Portia saw that Gaia was holding 2 gold bricks in her hands. Portia sucked in a cold breath. "Gaia, did you salvage this?"
Yes.
Gaia took the towel from Fei Lai and began to wipe herself. "We have enough money to buy toys for Evans." Chen Zhao and Fei Lai both smiled nonchalantly. Gaia was quite famous in the entertainment industry now. Plus, she had her private business and her famous fitness center. In the supernatural organization, her value was second only to Chen Zhao. Just these 2 gold bricks were really not enough to enter her eyes. They were just here for fun. Gaia looked at Meryl. "What's with that fishing boat? It's probably from a private salvage company. They disguised it as a fishing boat, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. Chen Zhao wasn't guessing blindly. The boom on the fishing boat wasn't used to pull nets. It was a lifting machine. Then, the people from the supernatural organization surfaced one after another.
Portia looked at them.
Each of them had 1 or 2 gold bricks on them. Her eyes were all red. She didn't have the ability, but these guys were too good at diving. Some of them didn't even need equipment to dive 100 meters deep and then float up with 2 or 3 gold bricks. Boss, if they're from a salvage company, why are they disguised as fishing boats? Portia asked, confused. Of course, Chen Zhao said. Salvage companies have to pay heavy taxes if they salvage a sunken ship. If they launder money, they only have to pay 15 to 20% at most. If they pay taxes to the government, they have to pay at least 45%. Also, some sunken ships are involved in international disputes. It's very troublesome to sue them in international courts, so they naturally have to disguise themselves as fishing boats. He knew so clearly mainly because he knew Gurette. Gurette's main business was piracy, but she also had other businesses. Salvage companies were one of them. Most salvage companies didn't register their business. Most salvage companies were in the business of salvaging wrecks and wrecks from the 18th and 19th centuries. Both were unpredictable businesses most of the time. The cost of salvaging wrecks was low, and they might not find them. In the past, the number of wrecks wasn't high, but it wasn't low either. They had to search with all their might. They might not even find one in a year or 2. Compared to the cost of searching and salvaging, the items that could be salvaged might not even cover the cost. If taxes were included, the salvage company wouldn't even be able to make a profit. Taking a risk out of desperation was their only choice. At the moment, the people on Merrill were panicking. They realized that no matter how hard they tried, the ship couldn't get close to the yacht. Even at full power, they couldn't move it at all. They wanted to escape, but they couldn't either. The entire ship stayed where it was. What do we do now? Judge Bang Chen asked anxiously. He'd been in the salvage business for more than 20 years and had never seen such a strange thing. How about we ask the boss for help? One of his men suggested. Judge Bang Chen thought for a long time, but there was no other way. He could only ask the boss for help. Bang Chen picked up the satellite phone. Boss, we've encountered some trouble. What trouble? We encountered a yacht that appeared at the location of our salvage operation. We negotiated with them, but they weren't willing to leave. Then, Bang Chen Ian explained the situation to Judge Liu. Yacht? What kind of yacht? A very luxurious yacht with the Hydra logo printed on the hull. Boss, is this a Hydra organization? Chapter 1831. Hey, Gurette, how come you have time to call me? Chen Zhao was surprised by Gurette's sudden call. Is there news from Treasure Island? There's some progress, but we're still investigating, Gurette said. Chen, where are you now? Of course. Why do you ask? At home? On the boat? Gurette asked. Chen Zhao was stunned. He looked at the Merrill in the distance. That fishing boat disguised as a fishing boat is yours? It's mine, Gurette answered honestly. I found it, Chen Zhao said. It's been more than half a year.
Got it. I'll have them leave now.
Gurette wouldn't suspect that Chen Zhao was targeting her. The two were still in their honeymoon phase. They wouldn't scheme against each other over an ordinary boat. Tell them to leave this area, Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao, let the Merrill go. Portia didn't understand what the fishing boat was doing. It was going to charge over aggressively, but now it turned around and escaped.
Portia didn't know.
They could only escape with Chen Zhao's permission. The group of people played until dawn. Portia was so sleepy that she went to bed by herself. The next day, when Portia woke up, she saw the deck filled with gold and silver. However, everyone's share was clearly divided. Portia ate breakfast, which was as sumptuous as usual. But she still didn't see the chef. The supernatural organization didn't go into the water anymore. They'd fished out most of the gold that could be found. The rest had either sunk into the mud at the bottom of the sea, or they'd been washed away by the current. Then there was some silver. Silver wasn't very valuable. At least, it wasn't high on the market. They didn't want to waste any more time on silver. The Hydra finally returned to the ship. Other than the empty-handed Portia, everyone had a great harvest. The gold bricks all weighed 2 kilograms. Based on the current price of gold, each brick was worth $70,000 to $80,000. The gold content of these gold bricks was quite high. They should have been produced and crafted at the beginning of the last century. The more people picked up 3 or 4 gold bricks, while the less had at least one. There were more silver coins, but the price of silver was much higher than gold tea. To them, this was a huge windfall. Everyone was in a good mood. Except for Portia. Portia, don't be disappointed. This is for you. Gaia stuffed a silver coin into Portia's hand as a form of consolation. Portia felt even more stifled. Xi, are you really going to look for the golden apple? Feilai had already learned from Qinzhao, and Qinzhao had also agreed. However, Feilai's current identity was Xian Li's adoptive mother. Qinzhao still asked Xian Li to convince Feilai herself. Andy Feilai, can you agree? Actually, Qinzhao had already told Feilai some of the reasons. Feilai was more worried about Xian Li's safety. Feilai was silent for a moment. I only have one request. I'll agree to any request, Xian Li said impatiently. He looked at Feilai with pleading eyes. If you're in danger, call your uncle. Okay, Xian Li answered without thinking. Actually, Chun and I have been asking about the legendary treasure island, Feilai said. I hope you can come with us when we go to look for it. Xian Li hugged Feilai, touched. She was in her rebellious phase. However, she was also the easiest to be touched. A person's intelligence usually reached its peak at around 12 years old. Adults only lacked knowledge and a healthy worldview. Chen Zhao promised Xian Li that he would let her go out for a walk. He didn't really want her to find the golden apple. Chen Zhao just wanted her to go out and build a complete worldview. Why were university students always muddle-headed for 2 to 3 years after graduating from school? It was because they couldn't build a truly complete worldview in school. This was also why people always joked that society was the best university. However, Qinzhao's idea was that she had to go to school and train herself. School could impart knowledge and society could train her. Just then, Kalon ran in from outside, his face full of excitement. Feilai glanced at him. Kalon, what are you doing here? Ms. Feilai, where's Mr. Chen? Here, sunbathing in the yard. Kalon saw Qinzhao lying in the yard. Sometimes, he really felt that Qinzhao's lifestyle was like that of a cultivator. It was completely the lifestyle of a 70-year-old man. To any young person, sunbathing was unimaginable. Kalon ran into the yard again. Mr. Chen. Qinzhao was dozing off. He pulled down his sunglasses and glanced at Kalon.
What?
Mr. Chen, my dad agreed. Agreed to what? Dad agreed to go find the golden apple with Xian Li, Lisa, and Mr. Long. And Elite agreed? Qinzhao was surprised. What about your mom? She agreed too. I see. I'll call and confirm, Qinzhao said. Qinzhao thought that an elite wouldn't agree. After all, Kalon was studying at UCLA now. It wouldn't be easy for him to convince his parents. Qinzhao picked up his phone and called Amy first. An elite was a spiritualist, so it was more likely that he would agree. The possibility of AI me is not high. If AI me had agreed, then an elite should have also agreed. Hey, Amy, it's Chen. Mr. Chen, did Kalon go to your place? Kalon said that you agreed to let him take half a year off and go find the golden apple? Yes, I agreed, Amy answered. Why? Mr. Chen, didn't you agree to your adopted daughter too? Since you can agree, why can't I? I have my own thoughts. Qinzhao smiled bitterly. Qinzhao stood up. He didn't care about his children's grades. He wanted them to have a complete worldview and a correct way of thinking. I think that you'll find a way to protect Kalon, Amy said honestly. It's good for him to go out. He's never really left an elite and my side since he was young. I can't completely guarantee his safety. There's actually a certain amount of risk involved in this matter. There's no such thing as absolute safety. Even if you're at home, There's always the possibility of disaster falling from the sky. What does an elite think? He also agreed. Actually, it was an elite who convinced me. Chapter 1832. Chen Zhao had always wondered if the girls and boys in his family had switched personalities. It wasn't just Jerlin and Larissa who were lively and active. Even Mara and Sindora were very active. Unlike the 11 or 12-year-old kids, these kids already had a clear understanding. Mara and Sindora were the youngest of Chen Zhao's adopted children. They still needed their parents' love. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai were their parents now. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai were their parents, so they naturally doted on them. After the first few days of discomfort, they started to show their carefree personalities. Binance was also very carefree, but he liked magic more. Binance was a water magician. Chen Zhao didn't know any, but he could control water. Therefore, he could also give Binance some advice on this point. 11-year-old Kilo had become a fitness maniac. His body hadn't finished puberty yet, but he had to do more training than an adult every day. His training was similar to that of a professional athlete. Didi was the only one in the family. She was a girl from a rich family. At least in the eyes of Asians, she was a typical girl from a rich family. She was shy and introverted. She talked to everyone carefully. She also helped take care of the other kids. Today, after Portia came, Chen Zhao gathered the kids and went straight to Mirror Lake. Mr. Chen, how come you're free today? Felwood saw the large group of kids behind Chen Zhao. They're all my kids. I brought them here mainly to let them have some requests for their bedrooms, Chen Zhao said. Okay, I understand. Felwood nodded. The main construction of the villa had reached the end. Next was the renovation. Didi held little Jerlin's hand. The other kids had already dashed out. Holding little Larissa in his arms, Chen Zhao looked at the unhurried Didi. Didi, don't you want to see your bedroom as soon as possible? It's okay. I'll be there, Didi said. Although Didira was only 12 years old, her calm personality was even more stable than Xin Li's. It wasn't that Chen Zhao didn't like Didi, but he felt that kids should be more carefree. He could even accept Xin Li's rebellious personality. Didi La, if all those rooms are taken by your younger siblings, don't cry when that time comes. It doesn't matter. There are many empty rooms in this villa anyway. Indeed, this villa was larger than the old one, and there were more bedrooms and functions than the old one. Standing in front of the villa, a few children surrounded a person, one after another, making a ruckus. That person had a look of despair on his face. He was the interior designer in charge of the renovation. It wasn't that he didn't know how to satisfy these children's requests. It was because he couldn't hear their request at all. He wanted to shout at the children to stop, but he didn't dare to. As the company's designer, he also knew that Chen Zhao was the company's super investor. They were all Chen Zhao's children, so he had to take good care of them. Okay, say it one by one. Don't be so noisy, Chen Zhao said. Xin Li, you go first. While the children were pestering the interior designer, Chen Zhao received a call. Hello, who is it? Hello, Mr. Chen. Hello, Ms. Blood Mary. Chen Zhao immediately changed his tone. Hello, I'm very happy that you called me. I'm sorry that my assistant had my phone before, so I couldn't answer your call immediately. It's okay. Mr. Chen, why are you calling me? Mary, the 23rd generation's blood, asked. Ms. Blood Mary, do you have any connections in England? What do you plan to do, Mr. Chen? My daughter wants to steal the Book of Prometheus from the British Museum. Huh. 23rd Blood Mary exclaimed. Mr. Chen, you won't be involved, right? No, Chen Zhao said. Mr. Chen, you want me to help your daughter steal the Book of Prometheus? 23rd Blood Mary was troubled. She was indeed very authoritative in Europe, but it didn't mean that she could do whatever she wanted. Moreover, England was one of the top countries in Europe in terms of national power and influence. 23rd Blood Mary's greatest influence was in the spiritual world, not the political world. Moreover, the British Museum was a national museum. Even 23rd Blood Mary couldn't help. No, Chen Zhao said. I don't plan on asking you to help either. If he needed help, Chen Zhao wouldn't ask anyone else. After all, he wasn't that familiar with 23rd Blood Mary. I just hope that you can help me monitor my daughter's group, Chen Zhao said. If there's anything exposed, help me cover it up. Of course, 23rd Blood Mary agreed, without hesitation. So, she was just helping to clean up some traces. 23rd Blood Mary quickly understood Chen Zhao's intentions. Chen Zhao wanted Xi and Li to go out and explore, not have them seek death. Xi and Li, Kalon, Moore, and Lisa had been together every day for the past few days. They discussed the information they'd gathered. Ruan Faxi was also actively preparing for the match. He wasn't going to find the golden apple. He was going to be a babysitter. Thinking of this, Ruan Faxi felt a headache coming on. He started regretting his stupid decision that day to encourage Xi and Li to find the golden apple. In the end, he'd gotten himself into trouble too. Now, he could only force himself to be a babysitter. He also had to make sure that nothing would happen to the kids. If anything happened to any of them, Chen Zhao would definitely skin him alive. After leaving Mirror Lake, Chen Zhao took the kids to Mountain Town for a walk. The residents of Mountain Town had a much better life now. Comparing the profits of the beer factory also brought them great returns. With a stable job and income, they had more money in their hands. Of course, the Mountain Town government still wanted a share of the profits from Chen Zhao. Even the fact that the Dashan beer brand was originally owned by the Mountain Town government was brought up again. Fortunately, Chen Zhao had listened to Denver and bought out the entire Mountain Beer brand. Legally, the excessive demands of the Mountain Town government couldn't be satisfied. Of course, the Mountain Town government's actions were quite shameless. But facing such huge profits, it was reasonable for the government to act shamelessly. Of course, Chen Zhao and Denver always ignored such requests. After all, they had the absolute right to speak. They could even threaten to fire the Mountain Town employees. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.